Part 45. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 448. An hour later. Lin Ling lay sleepily on the shore, sitting in the hot spring with her legs bent. Her white jade-like skin was soaked by the hot spring, and her jade back was white and smooth. The hair that was originally tied up was scattered on the hot spring at some point, and the water covered her shoulders. Her silver hair was scattered on the water, her face was flushed, and her eyebrows were charming. Musian picked up the thin ribbon that had drifted into the hot spring, walked to her side, gently rubbed her silver hair behind her, and said softly, "Look, you have been in the hot spring for so long. My face is all red, I'd better go back to the room and rest early." AAA Lin Ling shook his head, with a look of distrust on his face, wary of Musian, the culprit. The powerful body of the Hedeo realm has been tempered by thunder and calamity, not to mention that Lin Ling also belongs to the category of demon cultivator in a sense. And the demon cultivator's physique is far stronger than that of humans. How could he blush after soaking in a hot spring for a while? They all have to understand. Musian is a thief and calls to catch the thief. What's wrong? You're so cold to me. All of a sudden Musian couldn't help but laugh. Lin Ling glanced at Musian, raised his fingertips, and grabbed the pamphlet thrown aside in his hand. You want to do bad things. The problem is that I have basically done what I want to do, Musian said helplessly. I just said it, I just want to help you. Most of today's karma has subsided. I can suppress the rest by going back to meditate. Let's wait until tomorrow. Lin Ling blushed and held up a small book in front of her face. She poked her head out from behind the small book and peeped shyly. Musian smiled helplessly. Does Sister Lin Ling just not trust me that much? Lin Ling was stunned for a moment, then shook her head slightly. You're a really good friend of mine, like her, so I trust you, but I still need a little time. Musian put her scattered silver hair back into a bun, put his arm around her shoulders, and said softly, we are Taoist couples, not good friends. Lin Ling shook her head gently and held up a small book. They are good friends. You already have a Taoist partner. They all like you, so you can no longer be a Taoist companion with me. Being with me will make you embarrassed and make them unhappy. I just want everyone to be happy. Musian was silent for a moment and sighed softly. You don't have to think about me in everything. You should also consider yourself occasionally, and even do whatever it takes to do so. People who are too naive cannot survive in the world of immortality. Fortunately, behind her is concubine Shang Yan. Musian couldn't imagine how much trouble Miss Ling Long would encounter along the way if she were to venture out alone. By any means necessary, Lin Ling wrote in his notebook. The end justifies the means. You don't have to think about others in everything, you should also consider yourself occasionally. Musian gently rubbed Lin Ling's silver hair. If I leave with others today, it will take several years to see you again. What will be done? As long as you are happy, she replied in the notebook. What about you? Musian asked. Lin Ling was confused for a moment. If it takes me a long time to see you again, won't you feel lonely? What will you do with your karma? Sometimes don't wrong yourself. You have suffered so much in the past and it's time to enjoy it, Musian taught. The moment these words were spoken, Lin Ling's eyes showed a hint of contemplation, and she nodded her head slightly and said AAA. Seeing this, Musian said in a timely manner, anyway, let's go back. After staying here for so long, everyone under the Mu mansion should be suspicious. With that said, after changing his clothes, he was planning to leave the hot spring first. At this moment, a small hand suddenly grabbed the corner of his clothes from behind. She held up the small notebook. Can we continue with what we just did? Unexpectedly, Musian shook his head gently. No. Lin Ling was at a loss for a moment. She didn't know why Musian, who had been so gentle to her just now, would reject her now. That's something that Taoist couples only do, So you have to call me something more in line with the Taoist couple, Musian said. Only then did Lin Ling understand. She frowned, glanced at him faintly, and held up the small book. Bad boy. Musian looked at her and smiled without saying a word. Mew, Mew Lang. The sound is clear and crisp like silver bells in the summer breeze, and like a siren in the sea, the voice is sweet and beautiful. She gently pulled the corner of Musian's clothes, frowned, bit her lip, and looked up at him. Different from the silly and cute foodie Miss Ling Long in the past, she seemed to be more humane at the moment. Musian was confused at first, but then he soon understood it in his heart. She is affected by the fire of karma and is not quite who she is. However, facing the silver-haired beauty's name and small look, Musian still shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not enough. You have to kiss me." Before he finished speaking, Lin Ling let go of him as if she had lost her patience. "Musian will always be obsessed with me today," she said softly. Musian's smile faltered. Looking at the silver-haired beauty whose red eyes had lost their luster, a thought flashed through his mind. I'm done with it. Yin hour, 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Lin, Sister Lin Ling, I was wrong. Under the gauze curtain, the candle light flickered, and Musian's voice came weakly from the curtain. Lin Ling tilted her head and looked at him, thought for a while, and then said to cheer for Musian, "You can do it." "No, I really should take a break." Musian's voice stagnated. Something magical happened. Although the spiritual energy of the heavenly court that was consumed in the natural furnace was not restored, his originally tired body recovered in an instant. No, that was not recovery, but the word spirit technique forced his body to recover, just like the hand grip meter went round again after it exceeded the limit. And Musian's originally boring state suddenly became excited, and his eyes looked at the silver-haired beauty in his arms with fiery eyes. The next day, early morning. Musian opened his eyes, got out of bed slowly, and stretched his body refreshed in the face of the sunlight slanting in from the window. After all, it is the body of the Fox clan, and the recovery speed is fast. In less than 2 hours, it was completely recovered. The body of the nine-tailed fox is indeed amazing. The luxurious and elegant big bed was in a mess. Last night, this big bed had experienced something different from usual. If it is used as a holy relic in the future, it might be able to summon the legendary spirit dragon. The bedding on the bed was neatly folded and placed aside. Lin Ling had woken up early. No one was seen in the room. Musian grabbed the robe on the hanger, dressed neatly, and looked at himself in the bronze mirror again. Perfect. Recalling what happened last night, Musian couldn't help but smile warmly. Unlike any girl he knew, Miss Lin Ling was not ignorant of the relationship between men and women in the past, but she did have a little understanding, so that Musian felt sorry for the girl and couldn't bear to bully her. But Sister Lin Ling in the state of karma fire really can't be provoked. At least don't make her angry. Even rabbits bite when they are angry, let alone Miss Ling Long. Originally, Lin Ling's karma fire was still mostly unsuppressed, and Musian was jumping around in front of her repeatedly trying to tease her, but was taught a lesson by a word spirit. Karma fire is really interesting, Musian smiled. Thinking of Lin Ling when the karma fire burned her body last night, Musian was a little eager to move again. If you have to explain, Lin Ling in the karma fire state is almost two different people from her normal state. Miss Ling Long is usually a naive and cute girl who only wants to eat, but in the karma fire state, she changes from a cute girl to an annoying little goblin. It is equivalent to changing from a reserved and shy girl to a witch who only wants to seek pleasure, which is completely different from her usual self. In general, Lin Ling is good in her daily life, and she is also good in the karma fire state. No matter which state she is an extremely rare beauty. The most important thing is, she has white hair. White hair and red eyes. And she also has a full chest that can support the lapels and plump long legs. These advantages are enough to cover up any of her shortcomings. Sister Linling is simply the best. Why didn't I notice it before? Oh no, she was born with amazing perception, she can sense any bad thoughts I have, I really can't find a way to conquer her. It's not difficult to conquer a foodie, but it's very difficult to conquer a foodie who can know what you think of her anytime and anywhere. Unfortunately, just one day is not enough for her karma fire to be completely resolved. I'm afraid it will take some time in the future. Musian sighed lightly. Karma fire has accumulated over the years, so it is naturally impossible to completely resolve it overnight, but at least now for a short period of time, Linling's troubles caused by karma fire can be temporarily stopped. But in the future, she will still need Musian's help from time to time. Miss Lin, are you satisfied with the breakfast prepared by the servants? Mr. Wren smiled gently and said in a gentle voice. The more he looked at this girl, the more satisfied he was. She was indeed suitable to be the Taoist partner of the young master. She was different from any girl he had known in the past. He could tell at first glance that she was a simple-minded girl. She looked a little cute and weak, but she was willing to rely on the young master, so that he would not feel inferior. Like Biruoxi before and even the genius girl at that time, they were all beings with talents that could be called demons. The young master was bound to feel inferior when he became a Taoist partner with such a girl. Linling glanced at him, then nodded AAA, and took out a small notebook. It's delicious, thank you. I like it, I like it. Mr. Wren nodded slightly and answered with a smile. After a while, Linling took another bite of the cake and turned his head to look at the entrance of the restaurant. Musian was standing there at some point, and smiled. Sister Linling got up really early. Linling subconsciously glanced at Musian, and quickly retracted his gaze, shaking the silver hair on his head, picked up a big meat bun and fed it into his mouth in 3 or 2 bites, and then drank a sip of tea, looking normal. But anyone with a discerning eye could see that her pretty face was flushed. In a sense, she was the one who took the initiative last night, and she also used the word spirit in a strange way. If Shang Yanfei knew about it, she would probably tease him. Elder Ren was a discerning person. He saw through the trick between the two at a glance, but he did not expose it. Instead, he taught him earnestly, "Young master, do you sleep until noon in the sect? I'm not saying anything bad about you. If you are so lazy in the sect, you will probably be left behind by other disciples in terms of realm." Musian spread his hands. "I have reached the peak of spiritual cultivation." Elder Ren glanced at Musian and chuckled. Under normal circumstances, it takes at least several months to reach a certain level, and this is when the cultivation goes smoothly and there is no bottleneck. The young master has been able to cultivate to the peak of the spirit refining in these days since he joined the sect. Wouldn't that make up for all the cultivation that was previously lagging behind? Musian urged his spiritual energy and gently pushed in the direction of Elder Ren. The old man reacted very quickly and raised his hand to slap him. And almost at that moment, he suddenly raised his head, widened his eyes, and stared at the young master in shock, as if he had seen a ghost. "How did you do it?" "It was just a normal practice, and I reached the peak of the spirit refining while practicing." "I thought normal people were like this." Musian looked surprised. "This is a normal person. This cultivation speed is probably comparable to that of the genius girl who came to see you a few days ago." Elder Ren stared at Musian in astonishment. AAA, Linling raised his head and looked at him in confusion. Musian seemed to know what Linling was talking about, and explained with a smile, "She was one of my ex-girlfriends in Tianqian City, but we broke up, so don't worry about it." Mr. Ren glared at Musian unhappily and said, "It's amazing that you still remember it. If you hadn't reminded me, I probably wouldn't have remembered it." Musian said with a smile. When he was in Tianqian City, he didn't say that he was a troublemaker, but he did chase many girls with this appearance. And a girl who happened to pass by Tianqian City in the past was also chased by Musian. Mr. Wren sighed lightly. 3 years ago, Master, you told her that you would pick her up and marry her after you solved the Gongsun family's problems in the future, but you probably don't remember it at all. As a result, it's been almost 3 years since you left, and now people have come to find you in person, and I have to clean up the mess for you. I chased dozens of girls at the beginning, if not hundreds. How could I remember so many things? Musian was also helpless and shook his head and sighed. These were all the troubles I caused before my memory was awakened. Now I have made up for all the sins I committed. Lin Ling didn't seem to care much about the conversation between the two, and just lowered her head to eat breakfast. Musian looked at the silver-haired beauty chewing on the big meat bun, and said casually, "So, she came to the Mu family now to make me fulfill the promise I made to her at that time." The old man glared at Musian unhappily. "You are dreaming. You haven't contacted others for so long, and you still expect them to miss you. She came here this time to cancel the engagement, saying that she would not owe you anything in the future." Musian was stunned. Then, a relieved smile appeared on his face. "That's good, that's good. There are already enough fish in the fish pond. If there are more, he will not be able to control them, and they will be bitten back sooner or later." Old Ren was also somewhat speechless. Seeing this silver-haired beauty and thinking of Bairuoxi, he knew that the young master must have been in trouble after going to the sect, and must have caused a lot of trouble outside, so he could only glance at him unhappily. "By the way, Old Ren, if I remember correctly, you should be a Xian-grade alchemist now, right?" Old Ren asked unhappily. "What's the matter? Why do you suddenly mention this? Would you consider going to Yizhou to hone your skills for a while in the future?" Musian said. He knew that the old man had no hobbies other than alchemy in his life, so he asked about this. Old Ren was stunned at first, then waved his hand and said, "No need, I'm already a big old man, it's not convenient to go out, it's good to stay in the Mu family." This is the truth, but it is also for Musian's consideration. The proposal to go to Yizhou makes people very tempted. But Yizhou is too far away from Dongzhou, and there are many alchemy masters there. It is impossible for them to accept him, an old man who is almost half buried, to learn. "I am serious." "Isn't Mr. Ren only interested in alchemy?" Musian asked. He hoped that Mr. Ren could take this opportunity to comprehend the Dao of alchemy and live for another 1,000 years. Mr. Ren watched him grow up, and he was like a relative to Musian. "If you are in Yizhou, your alchemy skills can be further improved, and there will be many prescriptions that are not available in Dongzhou." Musian told him the benefits of going to Yizhou. Mr. Ren hesitated a little. "Young master, are you sure? If you have to ask for help, you don't have to do so. I happen to know someone there, she will agree, don't worry." Musian smiled. His agreement with Luo Tan is that after he returns to the Void Realm, the two natural furnaces can practice dual cultivation. And now, he is only one step away from refining the spirit and returning to the Void. "Of course, we have to wait until the ancestral worship meeting is over." Musian raised his head and looked in the direction of the Blue Tribe. "Aa." At this time, a pleasant voice pulled Musian back to reality from his previous thoughts. Musian looked back and saw Lin Ling, who had already eaten, holding her cheek with her hand and looking at him. She raised her little notebook with doubt in her red eyes. "Do you want to go back? The ancestral worship meeting is still a few days away. We can set off tomorrow." Musian shook his head and smiled. "I'm thinking about other things now." Lin Ling tilted her head. "AAA." Musian took her hand and walked out of the restaurant, and then under her clear and innocent red eyes, he leaned close to her ear and whispered, "I want to be a dragon knight." In the blink of an eye, a day passed. The bright moon was hanging high in the sky, bringing a bit of chill in the early spring. In a quiet and peaceful village, there were occasional barking of dogs. No matter how you look at it, this is a very ordinary village. The only difference is that all the young people in this village have moved out, and those who remain in this village are all lonely and helpless old people. The old people all have more or less physical problems, some are lame or blind, and some have broken arms. On weekdays, they can only rely on growing some wild vegetables and the supplies sent by the Don Chamber of Commerce. Although life is hard, it is also peaceful and peaceful. But tonight, with the appearance of an old man, this tranquility was completely broken. Buzz. Along with the vibration of space, a ray of white light emerged, and an old man walked out of the white light. He limped and dragged his lame leg slowly, and appeared in the village. In the old man's hand, he was holding an unconscious teenager. It was Huang Weifeng. What happened to this child? From the disabled village, an old lady with one eye blind came tremblingly with a cane. The old man sighed softly, he was too impulsive. He went to the Lan family and offended the husband of the Qing emperor. The old lady's turbid eyes were gloomy. She was silent for a moment and sighed softly, send him out as soon as possible. The peace in the village cannot be broken again. The old man nodded slightly, I will send him out of the village in 2 days. He glanced at the materials piled up outside the village and asked, did Manting come here 2 days ago? The old lady shook her head and said, there was a small competition in her sect these 2 days. She was busy practicing and didn't come, but she asked someone to send a message saying that she would come to visit us in a few days. The old man's eyes were quite relieved, and he nodded slightly, that child is kind-hearted. In the past, when the village was poor, it was the materials sponsored by the Don Chamber of Commerce, and at that time Huang Manting would send people to visit these disabled elderly people in the village every now and then. Yes, he is much kinder than Wei Feng. The old lady's words were full of hints. She leaned on her cane and slowly walked towards the village. The old man stared at the direction where the old lady left with deep eyes, and suddenly said lightly, Golden Emperor. A ray of golden light slowly lit up in Huang Weifeng's body, and the appearance of a holy light unicorn emerged. Its figure was extremely noble. The moment it saw the old man, it was extremely excited, Tianzun, you are finally willing to see me. As soon as the voice fell, it quickly fell silent under the old man's casual gaze. I am just an ordinary old man now, not the Daoku Tianzun you mentioned. The old man said faintly, tell me everything that happened to this child when he went to the Blue Clan 2 days ago. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 449. 2 days later. Musian and Lin Ling returned to the land of the Blue Tribe in a carriage. They could see the landforms of Dongzhou by opening the curtains and looking down. There was a strong smell of medicine floating in the air, and even unknown cranes spread their wings and flew proudly, following them all the way. Lin Ling lay in front of the carriage, her red starry eyes shining, staring straight at the cranes outside, as if thinking about something. Musian turned his head and looked at her twice more. She didn't seem to realize that there was anything wrong with her action, but from Musian's perspective, she could see 2 completely different scenes. The white dress embroidered with cloud patterns wrapped her graceful and tight figure, her hips pressed on the soft couch, her silver hair naturally scattered, and her red eyes reflected the figures of the cranes outside, looking like a girl who was ignorant of the world. Oh, if I have to say, she is indeed an innocent girl. Although her lifespan may be similar to that of the Green Emperor, her mind is still that of a young girl. Musian took a look at the cranes that followed them outside, and silently complained in his heart, fortunately, Sister Lin Ling had a full meal before leaving today, otherwise you might have to go to the pot today. Lin Ling has a huge innate luck, which will attract the love of all living things. These cranes followed her all the way because of this. But they didn't know that the hostess in the carriage was not admiring their appearance at this moment, but was thinking about whether to start the pot and heat the oil to roast the crane meat. She obviously has the strongest and most violent power, but she is as innocent as a little girl. Muzian looked at the silver-haired beauty lying in front of the window and couldn't help sighing in his heart. But it is probably because of her innocent heart that she can practice without distraction and advance to the Hedeo realm so quickly. AAA. She noticed the gaze of the young man behind her, turned her head to look at him, and made a confused sound. It's okay, you continue to enjoy your scenery, don't worry about me. Muzian waved his hand. Lin Ling thought for a moment and raised the notebook. There are many delicious ingredients outside, more than in the section. You counted those cranes as ingredients. Muzian looked at her soft face, met her eyes, was silent for a moment, and said, you can speak but can't speak casually because of the word spirit technique. Do you feel sad? Lin Ling shook her head. I'm used to it. It's a lucky thing that I was born. She often told me not to complain about myself. If you hadn't persisted until today, you wouldn't be able to take me to the outside world, right? Muzian tilted his head and thought that it seemed to be true. If Lin Ling hadn't been suppressing the fire in the cave in the past, he would have no chance to meet her at all, let alone take her out to play like these days. But he thought about it, if he were Lin Ling, could he really persist for so long like her, suppressing the karmic fire in the cave day and night, and never see the light of day? Sister Lin Ling is really amazing. After a long time, Muzian sighed softly, if it were me, I think I would go crazy. Staying in that gloomy and cold cave for years to suppress the karmic fire, not even knowing what Dongzhou looks like, even if she is in the Hedeo realm, what can she do? She is just a girl who has power but cannot use it at will. Lin Ling's expression was calm, and she shook her head gently. Compared to her, I am nothing. She. Muzian's mind moved slightly, as if he guessed something. Sister Sect Master? What's wrong with her? Lin Ling seemed to realize something, covered her mouth, blinked, and shook her head gently. Muzian smiled and said, forget it if you can't say it, don't force yourself. Sorry, but I promised her before not to tell anyone about her. Lin Ling raised the small notebook and looked at Muzian guiltily. The spring breeze blew through the curtains of the carriage, and the lapels fluttered with the wind, revealing the round shoulders. The white skin seemed to have no friction, and the full chest made the white clothes bulge, and the ravines were unfathomable. Muzian pondered for a moment, and suddenly smiled. Sister Lin Ling, has anyone told you before that you can't just apologize verbally when you apologize? Lin Ling made a puzzled sound. AAA. Then what should I do? You have to call me Mulang. Muzian teased seriously. Seeing Lin Ling's hesitation, Muzian persuaded her, took her hand and pulled her into his arms, saying, we are Taoist couples now, and it is normal for Taoist couples to call each other like this. Looking at the silver-haired beauty in his arms who refused to give in, Muzian suddenly let her go. If you don't shout, I will ignore you. Lin Ling was stunned for a moment, then gently tugged at the corner of Muzian's clothes with her little hand. AAA. Muzian never said a word, turned his head to look at the scenery outside the window, and counted down silently in his heart. When the countdown reached 3, he finally heard a very small and crisp voice coming from beside him, Mulang. Seeing Muzian's happy expression, Lin Ling raised the little notebook. Does calling you like this make you excited? She could feel that Muzian was extremely happy physically and mentally at the moment. Muzian nodded slightly and smiled. If I hear Sister Lin Ling call me like this when I'm in a bad mood, I think all the unhappiness will be swept away. AAA. Lin Ling's innocent and pretty face showed a trace of thoughtfulness. At this time, Muzian suddenly asked casually, you have been out with me for several days. Isn't the sect leader's sister worried? She knows that nothing will happen to me. Hearing Lin Ling's answer, Muzian was surprised at first, but then he realized it quickly. Lin Ling was born to be favored by the great Dao. Anyone could get into trouble, but not her. Even people with great luck can't die easily, let alone a spiritual dragon who is born with luck and symbolizes luck. If that's the case, The only possibility that Sister Lin Ling might get into trouble is that she will be burned by the fire of karma. Musian said thoughtfully, but I can suppress the fire of karma, so there is no need to worry about this possibility. Of course, the premise is that he will continue to suppress the fire of karma for Lin Ling until the fire of karma that has lasted for 10,000 years completely disappears. But you said before that you transferred the bad luck of the sect master's sister to yourself, so you were corroded by the fire of karma. Why did you transfer her bad luck to yourself for no reason? Is it because the bad luck of the sect master's sister broke out recently, so you had to speak? Musian was talking, but found that Lin Ling had never said anything. He immediately understood and touched her hair with a smile. I know, I won't ask you about her. Lin Ling's eyebrows relaxed, and she reached out to hold Musian's head and gently pressed his face into her arms. Are our roles reversed? Musian couldn't help but complain. But soon, he was immersed in Lin Ling's soft heart, slightly closed his eyes, as if enjoying this simple warmth. After a while, Musian ran a hand along her back, passed over her waist, gently embraced the soft body of the silver-haired beauty, and suddenly said, by the way, can the word spirit technique even rewrite a person's physiological state? There are still limitations. Lin Ling shook her head. When I kissed you before, I seemed to feel that your spiritual energy would flow into my natural furnace. If it's not through kissing, but through other means, would it be possible as well? Musian muttered, looking at the full and upright heart of the silver-haired beauty. For example, relying on the word spirit technique to temporarily change Lin Ling's physical state or something like that. AAA, Lin Ling's red starry eyes were full of doubts. Nothing, don't worry about it. Musian quickly smiled and shook his head, took out a butter paper tape from the ring and handed it to her. The aroma of hot snacks wafted out of the butter paper tape, and Lin Ling's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. Eat it, I prepared it for you in advance this morning. Musian smiled. AAA. It's okay, I'm not hungry. After Musian finished speaking, he looked at the silver-haired beauty who was eating snacks, and suddenly said, it's a pity that this world doesn't know if there is coconut milk. If it is paired with this kind of drink, the food will be more delicious. The hair on Lin Ling's head stood up like a radar, and she raised her head. AAA, what is that? Musian glanced at the meat bun in her hand, and then glanced at her humble and plump chest, leaned over the silver-haired beauty's ear, and whispered something. Lin Ling's red eyes changed from bewilderment to surprise. Her beautiful face flushed instantly. She glanced at him faintly and raised her notebook. I hate bad kids. Musian reached out and fed the half-remaining meat bun in her hand into his mouth, and said with a smile, let's do a little experiment after this. As long as it doesn't involve cause and effect, the word spirit won't cause the fire of karma to burn itself, right? Sister Lin Ling, don't you want to try it? It will be more pleasant than the previous few days. Lin Ling raised her watery eyes and glanced at him. After a long time, she blushed and nodded gently. Outside the Blue Clan Hall. After a day and a night of travel, the carriage that Musian was riding finally arrived at the Blue Clan. Lin Ling held her cheeks with her hands, swung her feet and looked at the scenery outside. She seemed to have completely forgotten Musian's previous request and immersed herself in the wonderful world outside. When the carriage arrived outside the Blue Clan Hall, Musian was the first to get off the carriage. I thought my junior brother had already returned to the section. A noble and elegant cold voice came from behind. Lan Mulian. Musian turned his head and saw that the charming beauty in a fiery red dress and the cold sister were standing not far from the door of the hall. The natural spirit body quickly captured the beauty in the yellow dress standing in the corner. Sorry, Sister Lin Ling came to the Blue Clan a few days ago, so I took her to Tianqian City to relax. Musian smiled and greeted. A qualified actor can conceal his emotions well without revealing any flaws. Obviously, Musian is a qualified actor. Senior Ling Long. Doubt flashed in Lan Feiying's eyes. Why did you take her to Tianqian City? Although Lan Mulian did not say anything, her eyes were also fixed on the junior brother. Sister Linling was troubled by the burning of karmic fire before, and planned to return to the cave to retreat for 1,000 years to suppress the karmic fire. I was worried that I would not be able to see her in the future, so I took her to Tianqian City to taste the nearby delicacies, so as to avoid any regrets. Lan Murian heard the subtext of Musian's words. From what you said, Senior Linglong is in better condition now. Maybe because she was in a good mood after eating delicious food, her karmic fire has temporarily faded, Musian said. Lan Murian seemed to be thinking about something. Lan Feiying said, oh, slightly enlightened. Wei Mengru looked at the young master suspiciously. Musian's expression remained unchanged and he smiled and said, did anything happen to the Blue Clan during this period? When this matter was mentioned, Lan Mulian's eyes suddenly softened a bit, and he said softly, in the past few days, my mother's spirit tablets have been sent to the Lan clan. She will only wait for the ancestor worship meeting to start in a few days. She will return to the Blue Clan as the deceased wife of the clan leader. In this way, it can be regarded as settling one of her worries during her lifetime. When mentioning this matter, Lan Mulian seemed to fall into a brief state of emotion. After a while, she glanced at the chariot not far away. Senior Linglong is in the chariot. After hearing this, Lan Feiying and Wei Mengru looked at each other. Musian nodded calmly, she doesn't want to return to the sect for the time being, so we came here together. Lan Mulian looked at Musian and said softly, you weren't rude to Senior Linglong on the way, were you? Musian said with a helpless smile, who does Senior Sister think of me? No matter what, I will not lose my sense of proportion and dare to be rude to Sister Linling. If I offend her, she can use her magic to remove me from the situation, erased from this world. After finishing speaking, seeing that none of the three people were suspicious, Musian breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was Linling who followed him to Tianqian City and not other girls, otherwise it would have been really difficult to end at this moment. Although Linling is pure and innocent, he can sense the malice of others. Whenever Musian has any astringent thoughts about her, he will be noticed. Over time, you will naturally become wary of him. Because of this, no one would suspect him when he was with Linling. By the way, there was news about Huang Weifeng a few days ago. At this time, Lan Feiying suddenly said, the ray of spiritual consciousness in Huang Weifeng's body should be the mount that followed Daoku Tianzun, the holy light Kirin. And it is rumored that the holy light Kirin will only recognize one master in his life. This was part of the information obtained by the Lan family's secret investigation not long ago. Because of Musian's relationship, several elders did not hide the truth from the two sisters and truthfully told the truth, hoping that they would tell Musian and hope that he would be more careful. If something happened to him in the Lan family would not be able to withstand the fairy's wrath. Holy Light Kirin. Musian muttered, as if recalling whether he had seen this name in any ancient book in the past. The first elder of the Blue Clan told me yesterday that there were rumors in Dongzhou that Daoku Tianzun mysteriously disappeared thousands of years ago. The Holy Light Kirin lost its master and disappeared soon after that, Lan Mulian said. But it stands to reason that he can live at least one more life, and he shouldn't die so soon. Musian's eyes flickered, and then, as if he thought of something, he stared at Lan Mulian. Senior sister suspects that the mysterious power who took Huang Weifeng away before is Daoku Tianzun. Lan Mulian nodded slightly, and then stated that this was just her suspicion. The truth may not be the case, but she hoped that Musian would be careful. After all, they were knowing what the other was hiding, and they didn't know what the attitude of the powerful man behind Huang Weifeng was. It would be uncomfortable if he was targeted by a powerful person in the Hedao realm. Musian nodded slightly, I will be careful. He took a look at the sky and said, it seems like it's going to rain. I'll go pick up Sister Linling first. After Linling got out of the carriage, She saw Musian's heavy expression at a glance and took out a small book. I will protect you. It was obvious that she had heard everything they had just said. Musian showed a warm smile. Thank you. Linling shook her head gently and gently touched Musian's hair. What happened to Senior Linglong? Lan Mulian asked. It's okay, she's comforting me, Musian said with a smile. Lan Mulian was thoughtful. Senior Linglong treated you very well in the past, but now he is even more willing to consider you. It's really strange. Musian was worried that they would become suspicious, so he coughed lightly and said, let's go back first and then talk about it. Along the way, Musian changed the topic several times, but tried his best not to rely on Linling's topic. Unknowingly, he came to the dormitory where the two sisters lived. Linling followed a few people along the way. With the snacks prepared by Musian, she would not be bored. Musian glanced at the silver-haired beauty beside him and said with a smile, Senior sister, I will go and arrange a place for her to stay first, and I will see you later. Lan Mulian raised his eyebrows inadvertently and said softly, after Senior Linglong went to Tianqian City, he seemed to be even more clingy to his junior brother than before. Musian's head jumped, but he remained calm on the surface and said with a smile, maybe it's because I treated her to a lot of snacks these days. Lan Feiying glanced at Musian meaningfully. If a snack can please Senior Linglong, sect disciples would have done so in the past. Lan Mulian took over the fire power. I once heard Master say that the karmic fire of a spirit dragon cannot be easily suppressed. Why did you take her to Tianqian City and the karmic fire faded away on its own? Wei Mengru frowned slightly, staring at the young master without saying a word. Musian smiled and said, maybe it's because I have a natural affinity. It's just that this smile can no longer hold its own. At this time, Linling glanced at the three girls, opened her red lips lightly, and said, you are not allowed to bully him. Almost at that moment, the three people's original unkindness towards Musian disappeared in an instant. Lan Mulian was secretly surprised and whispered, word spirit. This word spirit technique is really mysterious and strange. Just speaking can distort a person's emotions. What would happen if he said something to his junior brother? But there is something more worrying right now. Lan Mulian's eyes fell on the cute silver-haired beauty and said, why is Senior Linglong so good to him? He has helped me a lot these days, Linling wrote in the little notebook, while protecting Musian, as if protecting his own child, with a vigilant look. A lot of help. Lan Mulian's eyes flickered, and suddenly he showed a friendly smile like breaking the ice. Could it be related to the fire of karma? I took the bus home today and was busy all day. I will add more tomorrow. Please vote for the monthly ticket and ask for the blade. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 450. How to suppress the karmic fire. This topic is a bit dangerous. Musian's heart skipped a beat when he heard Lan Murian's question, and he was about to speak. Lan Feiying put her fingertips on his lips and said with a smile, Sister just wants to ask Senior Linglong, if you have nothing else to say, just say less. Or. She changed her tone, what are you worried about being exposed? Musian smiled and said, how is it possible? I just think Sister Linling has some social phobia. She may not be used to everyone surrounding her like this. Lan Murian smiled and said, I used to chat with Senior Linglong often, she shouldn't mind. As she said, she looked at Linling. Musian also subconsciously glanced at Linling and gave her a hint with his eyes. Linling blinked her red starry eyes and immediately understood. At this time, Lan Murian suddenly smiled brightly. There are special delicacies in my Lan clan area that are different from those in Tianqian City. I will have someone send some to Sister Linling's room tomorrow. AAA. Linling immediately raised her little notebook, ask whatever you want. Musean. Lan Murian looked at Lin Ling, and her voice was as pleasant as the collision of ice cubes thrown into a water cup. In the past, I often heard Master mention the matter of karma fire. Karma fire is said to be innate and cannot be suppressed, but Sister Lin Ling seems to have suppressed it a lot now. Lin Ling nodded. Then can I ask Senior Ling Long how this karma fire was suppressed? Lan Murian asked sincerely. Wei Mengru pursed her lips, the afterglow of the sunset reflected in her peach blossom eyes, and her eyes flickered with suspicion. Musean's heart tightened, and he also looked at Lin Ling secretly. Lin Ling shook her head gently and wrote in the notebook, "This is a secret, I can't tell you." Fortunately, Sister Lin Ling is not that stupid. Although she looks cute and adorable, she is still very smart. Sister Lin Ling knows that my relationship with her cannot be exposed. If it were Yao Mang, she would have admitted it generously by now. Musean finally let go of his worries as the words written by Lin Ling in the notebook emerged. Although Lan Murian still looked suspicious, even she couldn't disrespect the master's best friend, so she had to give up on this issue. By the way, Sister Lin Ling is also in the Lan clan. I hope you can keep it a secret. Musean suddenly remembered this and made a suggestion to the pair of top-notch sisters. He didn't want Lin Ling's identity to be exposed so quickly. I know that if the elders of the clan knew that she was here, it would probably cause a lot of trouble. Lan Murian nodded slightly. The spirit dragon can give others luck, and although most cultivators' luck is not very bad, it is still far from great luck. Luck is something illusory, and the spirit dragon can give it to others as long as he opens his mouth. Although they certainly dare not do anything to the spirit dragon, as the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Once the matter of the spirit dragon in the blue tribe is exposed, it will eventually cause trouble. After explaining the matter, Musean looked at the yellow-skirt beauty and said softly, "I will take her to settle down first, and come to see you tomorrow." Wei Mengru glanced at the young master meaningfully, and her bright and charming eyes showed a different color than usual. "I always feel that Sister Mengru has seen something. I shouldn't have been so unreserved in front of her in the past. Now, I can't hide any secrets." When night fell, Musean returned to the palace that the Blue Tribe had prepared for him before, and he was exhausted physically and mentally. Lin Ling pulled the corner of his clothes behind him and wrote in the notebook for him to see, "How did I perform today?" Musean collected his thoughts, picked up the notebook in her hand, and wrote, "Sister Lin Ling did a great job. It's just that this may be unfair to you." She shook her head. "You don't like our relationship to be exposed, so let's hide it for the time being," she wrote. Musean gently touched her hair and said softly, "After all, you don't like to fight with others. If no one knows about our relationship, naturally no one will find trouble with you." Even though she had been traveling for a day and a night, she didn't look tired at all, and her complexion was even a little rosy because of moisture, and her temperament was ancient and elegant. Lin Ling lowered her head and wrote and drew in the notebook, then held it upright to show Musean, "But I will be unhappy when I see you with other people." Musean's mind moved slightly, and suddenly smiled. "This is a good thing. This means that Sister Lin Ling is more like a person than before." Lin Ling looked up and looked at him straight, holding the butter paper tape that had been eaten most of the time in her arms, which also contained some cakes. "If you are unhappy, you will be more like a person." She couldn't understand what Musean said. Musean grabbed her little hand and said, "Everyone has 7 emotions and 6 desires. It is normal to be happy, unhappy, jealous, and envious. Sister Lin Ling will be unhappy when she sees me with other girls, which means you like me. Like you refused to kiss me a few days ago, it was because you were shy. Shyness is also a manifestation of emotion. Will my jealousy cause you trouble?" she wrote in the notebook. "No, I am too happy to be happy." Musean couldn't help but laugh. He slowly stretched out his hand towards Lin Ling, and under the gaze of her clear red eyes, he put his arm around her waist and stared down at her stunningly pure face. But like I said before, you don't have to consider me in everything. Sometimes you should follow your own ideas and make yourself happy. AAA. Lin Ling made a thoughtful voice. Then, she gently leaned her head on Musian's shoulder. Before Musian could get started, she said softly, "Keep it like this and don't move around. I want to lean next to you first." Musian's body was unable to move for a moment, and he felt helpless for a moment. After a while, Lin Ling seemed to react. She opened her red lips slightly and opened her mouth to untie Musian's body. The spirit body is in the pure-minded Miss Ling Long. If any fish in my fish pond were replaced, there would be big problems. Musian moved his recovered body a little, thinking in his heart, secretly sighing. What the word spirit says will always be realized in various ways. Even the word spirit, such as Musian will be addicted to me, can take effect. This is enough to imagine how exaggerated the ability of the word spirit is. I don't know how long it took, but the sound of rain gradually came from outside the house. Lin Ling frowned slightly, and then under Musian's doubtful eyes, she took out a small book. "I don't like rainy days." "I quite like it. On a rainy day, drinking wine and enjoying the rain with the girl next to you in the house is not without its flavor," Musian said. "Why doesn't Sister Lin Ling like rainy days?" he asked again. "No one comes out on rainy days. When I was in the cave before, I couldn't hear anything." She held up the small book and looked extremely calm, but Musian saw a deep loneliness in her eyes. Even his eyes looked dull. Musian suddenly said softly, "Now that I'm with you, let's go outside the palace to enjoy the rain and have a late-night snack." Lin Ling was stunned for a moment, and her lonely and dim eyes suddenly brightened, looking at Musian with a radiant look. "Spring rain is always like this, continuous, and the rain quietly soaks the earth." The dormitory where Musian lives is on the north side of the Lan clan, with a total of 6 floors. There is an observation deck on each floor. When you climb up and look far into the distance, you can see part of the area near the Blue Clan, as well as the weak spiritual energy generated by the disciples of the small sects and small sects attached to the Blue Clan during their practice. At this moment, in front of the observation deck on the highest floor, Lin Ling was sitting on the soft mat with her legs crossed, shoulder to shoulder with Musian, nestled in his arms. She was wearing a snow-white dress that wrapped her slim figure, with bare feet and white feet. The thin shoulder straps had fallen off, her silver hair was messy, and she was holding a wine glass in her hand. Warm reminder: if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Her face was much rosier than before, and her innocent appearance exuded a charming temperament. Musian put his arms around her shoulders, obviously still immersed in the joyful intimacy just now. Musian looked like a sage who had no interest in women. He put his arms around Lin Ling's shoulders and looked at the dark sky outside the hall. The rain was falling with the wind, and there was silence among the Blue tribe. "Do you still think rainy days are bad?" Musian wrote in his notebook. Lin Ling shook her head gently. "Then when you are intimate with me, do you still feel uncomfortable or uneasy?" Musian wrote. "I wasn't used to it at first, but I gradually got used to it," Lin Ling wrote while leaning on the desk. Unlike the illiterate Lin Ling a few days ago, Miss Ling Long today is obviously much more mature, and she is no longer as expectant and uneasy as she was when she was intimate with Musian that night. "It's just a habit, no other feelings," Musian followed up and started writing. He didn't want to break the tranquility. He just wanted to enjoy the beauty in his arms, listen to the sound of rain outside the observation deck, and enjoy the quiet warmth. As the candle light flickered, Lin Ling glanced at Musian, blushed and shook her head slightly. "There's no other feeling." "Haha, that's not what Sister Lin Ling said just now," Musian teased, holding her slender waist, feeling the soft and tender body in his arms. "What did it feel like to be intimate with me just now?" he continued to ask. Lin Ling obviously knew what Musian wanted to hear, and glanced at him faintly, not wanting to pay attention to it. But at this moment, Musian suddenly pinched her waist gently. Lin Ling's toes curled up slightly in shame, and she wrote in her notebook with a red face, "I'm very happy." Seeing this, Musian raised the corners of his mouth slightly, planning to continue teasing. At this time, she continued to write in her little notebook, "I am very happy to be with you." Musian was silent for a while, drinking silently. "In the past 2 days, I suppressed the karma fire for her in the hot spring. It was only through Lin Ling's reserved half-effort that she finally managed to complete it. Today, there was both Musian's initiative and Lin Ling's cooperation. There is a saying that suppressing the fire of karma in a hot spring is actually far inferior to that in a bed purely from a sensory perspective. After all, there is no resistance from the water, so it won't be pleasant. But the experience, the difference in the scene, and the psychological satisfaction, although there is resistance, it is not comparable to that on the bed. Do you think we should write a letter to tell the sect leader so that she can feel at ease?" Musian suddenly asked. Lin Ling came to him this time because Shang Yanfei secretly instructed him to help Lin Ling suppress the fire of karma. Shang Yanfei is far away from the Blue Clan. They haven't replied for so long. The leader's sister is inevitably worried. Lin Ling shook her head gently and wrote in the little notebook, "It's good that you like it, but she should already know." Musian was stunned. "Did you tell her that I would help you?" Lin Ling shook her head, "She knows that you won't refuse me." "But you will refuse." Musian couldn't help but said. "I didn't expect that the leader's sister would also miscalculate. If it weren't for his wit and step-by-step approach this time, Lin Ling might really have to go back to the cave to retreat. If so, it would be impossible to see this innocent and cute little sister Ling Long again for 1,000 years. Lin Ling hesitated for a moment, then gently tugged at the corner of Musian's clothes to show him what she had just written. "Actually, I had bad thoughts about you before." Musian thought, "By bad thoughts, you mean, sees." Lin Ling buried her head and pecked his head gently, "AAA. When did it happen? How come I don't know? Every time the fire of karma burns, there will be another voice in my heart telling me to attack you, as if there is another me in my body." Reluctantly restraining her inner shame, she stretched out her arm, and a silver scale appeared on her snow-white wrist, and the scale seemed to be blazing with flames. "Is this the fire of karma? But haven't I suppressed it for you these few days?" Musian asked. "And during this period of time, I don't think I have ever seen this layer of scales on your arm." Lin Ling in the state of fire of karma is indeed completely different from the usual Miss Ling Long. If you have to say, the former is more like Lin Ling in the blackened mode. The fire of karma won't disappear so quickly. If I use the words involving cause and effect many times, it will reappear. If I want, I can stimulate the spiritual energy a little and it will emerge, Lin Ling wrote. "Sorry, I thought your fire of karma had completely dissipated. It has nothing to do with you. In fact, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to play outside with Mu Lang. The feeling of freedom is very happy." Lin Ling's pretty face suddenly flushed with shyness. She buried her face and tapped the small notebook gently. "And you were also very happy when you kissed me." Musian's heart was shaken, and he rubbed Lin Ling's hair and said softly, "Call Mu Lang again and let me hear it." Lin Ling's face flushed, and she wrote in the small notebook, "What does the name Mu Lang mean?" Although she didn't know what it meant, she always felt that Musian was playing tricks on her. "It's just a name for people of the opposite sex who are close to each other. It doesn't have any special meaning," Musian persuaded him earnestly. "If you call me that again, I'll have someone prepare a rich snack for you every day these few days." Lin Ling's beautiful eyes lit up slightly, and she looked up at him. "AAA. Really?" Musian nodded firmly. Mu Lang." Musian was very excited, and his eyes were inexplicably excited. For some reason, Just teaching Lin Ling to call him like this made people feel indescribable pleasure. Words will come true, but the title doesn't seem to be affected by words. I seem to have found a bug in the word spirit technique. In the future, I can let Sister Lin Ling call me more. This feeling is really exciting. Lin Ling looked at Musian's excited expression strangely, and seemed unable to understand why the other party was excited because of a name. She thought for a moment and called out again, Mu Lang. Musian touched her silver hair and said softly, Sister Lin Ling is so good. Lin Ling frowned and was unhappy. I am the senior. Senior Lin Ling is so good, Musian said. Lin Ling puffed her cheeks and turned her face away, not wanting to pay attention to him. Musian saw that the teasing was almost over and was about to speak to comfort her. At this time, Lin Ling seemed to have noticed something and looked up outside the hall. What's wrong? Musian asked. Lin Ling wrote in the little notebook, someone outside sneaked in here, to the east. While speaking, she lowered her head to tidy up her dress, tied the thin ribbon scattered on the ground around her waist again, and covered her snow-white skin in the white dress. Musian said softly, the east side, if I remember correctly, it should be the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. There are elders from different factions of the Blue Clan guarding it every day. If outsiders rashly step in, they will definitely be discovered. The elders who were responsible for guarding the ancestral land tonight did not notice and let the other party enter the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. Is it a bad guy? Lin Ling wrote. Musian showed a faint smile on his face and said softly, I don't know. But anyway, I just happened to be full, so I'll go and take a look to see which guest visited the ancestral land of the Blue Clan late at night. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 451. In the middle of the night, the rain fell lightly. That night, Musian took Lin Ling out of the observation tower and first came to the outside of the Blue Tribe Holy Land. After walking around a secret manor, Lin Ling stopped and looked directly at the ancient sacred mountain not far ahead. Xianhuang Mountain is known as one of the 7 sacred mountains in Dongzhou. According to rumors, the ancestors of the Lan family merged with the earth here and achieved the supreme fruit of Taoism. Later, before she died, she killed into the Forbidden Land alone and intimidated the ancient creatures. Soon after, she died in Xianhuang Mountain, leaving her own inheritance. So far, Xianhuang Mountain has become the ancestral land of the Blue Tribe. Every few years, the Blue Tribe will come here to worship. It is said that the ancestor of the Lan family was once a female emperor. Senior sister's divine body is similar to hers, and she can peek into the origin of all things. Even the great masters of the same realm have to retreat. Sister Lin Ling, have you heard of it in the past? Musian walked at the foot of Xianhuang Mountain on a rainy night and suddenly asked. She once came to Lianji section, Lin Ling wrote in the little notebook, revealing a secret that no one knew. Before the ancestor of the Lan family passed away, did he go to Lianji sect? Musian was quite interested. Could it be that he went to see the sect master's sister? What did they talk about? Lin Ling shook her head gently. I don't know what they talked about. At that time, I was still suppressing the karma fire in the cave, and rarely left. Musian's eyes flickered, and he remembered the ancient ship he saw by the lake some time ago, and the ancestor of the Lan family in the ancient ship. Is the ancestor of the Lan family really dead now? Musian suddenly asked. Her lifespan had not yet ended, but I don't know why she suddenly disappeared later. Lin Ling shook her head. Maybe the ancestor of the Lan family seen in the ancient ship at that time was really a living person? Musian thought. Soon, they arrived at their destination, the edge of Xianhuang Mountain. There was no way to go further ahead, and there were bushes and jungles everywhere. On a rainy night, the entire mountain forest was gloomy. It seems that there is no way to go ahead. Sister Lin Ling, are you sure it's here? Musian asked. Lin Ling nodded with certainty and whispered, the roads in this world are walked out, and the same is true for Xianhuang Mountain. The next moment, something magical happened. The surrounding bushes bent back silently, and the closed ancient sacred mountain in front shook slightly. The belly of Xianhuang Mountain gradually emerged in the vibration. Although it was a distance away, an ancient underground palace could be vaguely seen. In the underground palace, a huge stone door blocked the way forward for the two, and it was difficult to take a step forward. "It's best not to attract other people's attention," Musian said softly. Linling nodded gently, grabbed Musian's hand, opened her red lips, and whispered something. The next moment, the two disappeared from the front of Xianhuang Mountain, and when they reappeared, they were already in the depths of the underground palace. Unlike the underground palace that Musian imagined, this underground palace did not have the slightest feeling of gloom. Instead, it was shrouded in brilliant divine light, illuminating the entire underground palace, and it was extremely sacred. Linling's sight fell directly on a space crack that was emitting a hazy glow not far ahead. The space crack emitted amazing spiritual fluctuations, as if connecting to another world. Musian said softly, "The art of cave heaven." The art of cave heaven is a magic that can only be mastered in the return to void realm. Using the art of cave heaven, a huge space can be opened up in a limited space. However, the larger the space, the more materials are needed. From this spatial crack, Musian felt the vast spiritual energy, which was enough to imagine how much effort the ancestors of the Lan family had put into building this cave. At this time, Linling's eyebrows suddenly frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" Musian asked immediately after seeing this. "There is a very strong demonic energy here." Linling raised the small notebook. "Demonic energy? In the ancestral land of the Lan family?" Musian was stunned at first, and then, as if he had sensed something, he took out the ancient bell left by the nine-tailed fox from the ring. The ancient bell in his hand was making a very violent vibration sound. After a brief moment of surprise, Musian raised his head and looked forward. In the spatial crack, a ripple rippled, emitting a charming halo. Linling stepped forward and entered the cave with Musian. The next moment, the whole world seemed to be turned upside down, and the sky was spinning. A surge of will descended, like a god looking down from above. Almost the next moment, Musian felt that his realm was suppressed from the peak of the soul refining to the level of the fifth level of the soul refining. Will this cave suppress the realm of others? Musian was secretly shocked, and then glanced at Linling, who seemed to be fine beside him. "It seems that this formation has no effect on the Hedeo realm." Musian was relieved for the time being, shielded his own breath, and walked forward along the passage in the cave. At the same time, in the depths of this cave, in an area covered by white fog, ancient trees intertwined and towering, moss marks, there are many palaces in this area, stone pillars stand, and flowers wither and die. This matter is very important to you and me. If it goes wrong, the elder should know what the consequences will be." The young man in a green robe spoke slowly, with a casual and indifferent expression. "Holy Son, rest assured. I know what to do. Even if I try my best, I will help the King, Holy Land." The old man who spoke deliberately concealed his appearance and breath, and his tone was low, making it difficult to see clearly. And this young man, Musian had seen him once before, was the Holy Son of the King, Holy Land in Dongzhou. The Holy Son of King slowly raised his head and stared at the sculpture not far ahead, with a hint of obsession in his eyes. The sculpture was a woman with a compassionate expression. There seemed to be a faint deep blue light behind her, like a collection of all the holy and noble things in the world. "Are all the things ready?" the Holy Son of King asked casually, playing with the jade box in his hand. "Only with this jade box can one set foot in the depths of the ancestral land of the Blue Clan." The elder nodded silently. Then, he reminded, "It's getting late, the Holy Son should go back early. If you stay here for too long, you might be noticed." The Holy Son King looked at the sculpture from afar, and after a long time, he left with the elders behind him. The palace returned to silence. After nearly half a quarter of an hour, the originally silent palace suddenly rippled like the surface of the water. Linling and Musian, who had shielded their own auras, appeared in the palace. "Sister Linling, do you feel that there is something wrong with this place?" Musian asked. Linling pointed to the sculpture in front, and then handed him the contents of the small book. "There is a strong demonic aura in this sculpture, no less than the current queen of the demon realm." Musian was stunned. How could there be demonic aura in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan? "And you said it is no less than Zixuan." Musian muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with thought. Linling tilted her head and looked at Musian strangely, with a trace of doubt in her red eyes. How did he know the real name of the queen of the demon realm? Musian had already started brainstorming. "Since I joined the Blue Clan, I have always felt that something is wrong, but I can't tell what it is. Why does the ancient bell of the nine-tailed sky fox react to the Blue Clan? Why can the ancestor of the Blue family, who is clearly in that ancient ship, send down oracles at every ancestor worship meeting? And the ancestor of the Blue family said before that it was not her who sent down the oracles. Since it was not the ancestor of the Blue family who sent down the oracles, then besides her, is there any other great power in the Blue Clan? The answer may be on this sculpture." Musian looked up and stared at the graceful figure that vaguely appeared in his vision. He walked forward slowly and reached out to touch the sculpture. For a moment, the entire sculpture vibrated violently, and a rich pink demonic aura slowly overflowed from the sculpture. Musian looked at the ancient bell vibrating in his palm, and he understood in his heart, and whispered, "Nine-tailed sky fox. The spirit of the nine-tailed sky fox is in this sculpture." Linling gently tugged at the corner of Musian's clothes and held up a small notebook. "Someone is coming in from outside, we have to go." Soon after Musian and the others left the ancestral land of the Blue Clan, some Blue Clan elders who were meditating and practicing were awakened from their practice and sent people to the ancestral land to investigate. That night, many Blue Clan members were awakened by the movement of the ancestral land, and they were as frightened as if it was the end of the world. In the warm room, the curtains were low, and sandalwood was burning in the room. Lan Mulian was also startled by the violent vibration. The moment she opened her eyes, she raised her hand and took out the sword hidden in the ring. There were no tribesmen near the bedroom where the two sisters lived, so it was quiet. She quickly changed into a white inner garment, outlining her exquisite and tight figure, pushed the door and went out, looking in the direction of the ancestral land of the Land tribe. This cold beauty was holding a long sword flashing with cold light, and her long hair like a waterfall was scattered, covering her hips wrapped in white inner garments. "Sister, did you hear it too?" Not far away, Lan Feiying was also awakened. She had changed her clothes and shouted. "The noise is a bit loud." "It seems that something happened in the ancestral land," Lan Mulian said softly. "Where is Musian?" she asked again. Lan Feiying shook her head gently. "I don't know, maybe she is still meditating and practicing. They are next to the bedroom where Musian lives. They can hear the sound of the ancestral land here, so there is no reason why Musian can't hear it. Let's go to the main hall and wait for me." After Lan Mulian finished speaking, she turned back to the room, changed into a noble and cold moon-white long skirt, and left the bedroom with Lan Feiying, holding a sword, and went to the main hall of the Lan clan. However, as soon as they arrived at the main hall, the two sisters were immediately stopped by the guarding clan members. The people gathered in this main hall tonight were all senior members of the Lan clan, discussing matters about the ancestral land, and no clan members were allowed to enter. Lan Mulian and Lan Feiying looked at each other and did not force their way in. They looked past several clan members and fell on the elders in the distance. In addition to several elders, they also saw two living fossils of the Lan clan, as well as Lan Wu, the young master of the Lan family, and others. "Senior sister, Sister Feiying, why are you here?" At this time, A familiar and gentle voice came from behind. Lan Murian looked back and saw Musian, who had just returned from his ancestral land. She asked doubtfully, "When did you come here? I didn't seem to see you on the way here." "And, Senior Linglong is here too." Lan Murian looked at the silver-haired beauty again in doubt. "I feel a little bored tonight and can't meditate quietly, so I came out to relax," Musian said with a smile. He took a look at the scene in the main hall, and he knew in his heart, it seems that the movement in the ancestral land tonight also makes it impossible for them to meditate quietly. Lan Fading narrowed her eyes and suddenly transmitted a voice, "You should know something, right? About the movement tonight." Musian's eyes moved slightly, and he deliberately transmitted a voice to tease, "I know something, but what does Sister Fading plan to exchange?" Lan Fading gave him a charming look. "What do you want your sister to exchange information with you?" Musian pondered for a moment, and transmitted a voice, "For example, I put the information I know in the room, and then Sister Fading finds a time at night to sneak into the room wearing a tights. If I don't notice it, then the information is yours. What if you notice it?" Lan Fading's eyes are playful. Musian smiled and replied, "Then we have to punish the thief." "You wish?" Lan Fading glared at Musian, then glanced at her sister beside her. Lan Murian, who was noble and cold, was looking at Musian with a smile. Her eyes were playful, as if she had heard something interesting. Lin Ling, who was standing by, also frowned. Her white skirt was stained with some dust because she went into the mountains tonight. Under the skirt was a pair of plump, snow-white long legs, wearing a pair of deerskin boots embroidered with cloud patterns, with her legs together, looking well-behaved and obedient. No one would have thought that the spirit dragon of Lianji sect would appear in the Lan clan so openly, and along the way, no one recognized her identity. Lin Ling glanced at Musian with her faint eyes and gently tugged at the corner of his clothes. Then, when Musian turned around, she handed the small notebook in her hand to Musian and said, "Bad boy. Don't be unfaithful." Musian's eyes moved slightly, and he transmitted in surprise, "Sister Lin Ling could hear my transmission just now." Lin Ling glanced at Musian strangely, and wrote in the small notebook, "The sound transmission technique is not a very powerful spell. Many people know how to intercept it, unless the other party's realm is far higher than their own." Then, she wrote in the small notebook, "Your senior sister also knows how to intercept the sound transmission technique." Musian's eyes froze slightly, and he was stunned when he saw this sentence. Subconsciously, he raised his head and looked at the stunning beauty who was close at hand. Senior sister also knows how to intercept the sound transmission?" The cold beauty in a white dress and long black hair smiled, and pursed her sexy red lips. "Junior brother, do you have anything to say? Or do you want me to wear a tights and go to your room to play role-playing games with you?" Musian's expression suddenly froze. Doesn't that mean that when I communicated with Sister Fading in front of senior sister heard it? Social death. At this moment, Musian wanted to cover his face and escape from here, but in order to maintain his image, he had a calm look and forced a smile. "Just now I was just joking with Sister Fading." Lan Murian sneered, "Junior brother knows best whether it's a joke or not." Musian was helpless. "I didn't expect that flirting with my sister would be caught by my sister. This is too embarrassing. No, I must think of a way to make senior sister social death next time." Musian sighed in his heart. Lin Ling listened to the conversation of the three people, glanced at the two girls again, and couldn't help but frowned. She gently tugged at the corner of Musian's clothes and wrote in the small notebook, "Let's go back." Musian tried to collect his thoughts, nodded gently, and said goodbye, "Then I will take Sister Lin Ling back first." Lan Murian glanced at the obedient Lin Ling inadvertently, and suddenly said, "I always feel that Senior Linglong seems to be much closer to you than before recently. Now he will even go out to relax with you at night." Musian's heart skipped a beat, and before he could speak, Lan Feiying has already stepped forward, holding Musian's arm, and said with a smile, "Are you leaving so soon? Don't you want to play role-playing games? Sister will play with you tonight." The two sisters are in sync, and Lan Mulian smiled brightly almost at the same time, "I can also play with you. Whether it's the role-playing you mentioned, or other things." Musian's heart was shaken at first, and then the more he listened, the more he felt something was wrong. When he noticed the faint eyes of the silver-haired beauty next to him, he suddenly panicked. "I'm so, senior sister, Sister Feiying, please stop talking. I just want to tease you, but you are going to drag me to self-destruct." The two sisters of the Lan family seem to be flirting with him now, but in fact they are testing his relationship with Linglong. Although Miss Linglong has always been docile and well-behaved, it is hard to guarantee that she will be patient at this moment. "What's wrong? Your heartbeat seems to have accelerated a lot." Lan Feiying raised her eyebrows slightly, gently placed her palm on his chest, raised her head and smiled gently. "No, nothing, it's just that your proposal is a little tempting." Musian forced a smile and pulled the corner of his mouth slightly. Then, he immediately changed the subject and said, "There was a big commotion in the ancestral land tonight, it's not very convenient, let's talk about it another day." Seeing that the two sisters were suspicious but did not continue to speak, Musian breathed a sigh of relief and smiled, "Sister Linling, I'll take you back first." Linling raised her head and glanced at the two beauties in the little red skirt and the little white skirt, and then nodded obediently. Then when Musian held her hand, she suddenly thought about it and asked, "Are Malang and them Taoist couples?" The crisp and pleasant soft voice seemed particularly clear in the quiet rainy night, and the atmosphere outside the palace suddenly stagnated. Musian's body froze for a moment, like a sculpture weathered by time, with a frozen expression. "Malang." Lan Murian even doubted her ears for a moment, and her eyes fell on Musian subconsciously. Lan Feiying, who was about to return to the palace with her sister, also stopped, tilted her head slightly, and looked at Musian. "First update today. So, they were the protagonists all along." Author, CCC. Chapter 452. At this moment, Musian suddenly felt that he was a little bit out of control, and his brain was in a semi-shutdown state. "Mulang," Lan Mulian repeated softly. This title was extremely familiar to her, because Bairuoxi had called Musian that way before. In this era, when a woman calls her beloved Taoist monk, she usually adds the word Lang to the end of her surname. Linling's words were basically the same as self-destruction. Lan Feiying narrowed her eyes, with a dangerous look in her eyes. Lan Mulian's face turned gloomy for a moment, and there was a hint of teasing and sullenness in his bright autumn eyes. "Senior sister, it's a long story." Musian forced a smile. Even if he couldn't see his expression at the moment, he didn't need to think about it to know that his expression must be awkward and polite at the moment. "Junior brother, what a trick. You deceived Miss Bai into calling you Mulang, and now you have even caught up with Senior Linglong." Lan Mulian's voice was cold, and her pretty face was covered with frost. "It's not that I succeeded, it's just that a lot of things happened this time." Musian coughed to cover up his embarrassment. "It's a long story. I'll explain it to my senior sister when I have some free time." When he finished speaking, he glanced at Linling helplessly. The silver-haired beauty blinked innocently and held up the small notebook. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it." "I believe you." Musian almost lost control of his expression and his mentality collapsed. Miss Linling obviously knew what Mulang meant, otherwise she wouldn't have blushed when she called out this title a few days ago. She would speak like this to the two sisters now, and he had to doubt Linling's motives. "He looks cute and harmless, but he is actually a natural black." Lan Mulian sneered and said, "Can you explain it clearly now, or are you saying that junior brother is too busy going back to make out with senior Linglong?" My relationship with Sister Linling is relatively pure, Musian explained. Pure love. Lan Feiying joined the battlefield and asked with a smile. Lan Mulian's beautiful eyes, as clear as late autumn pool water, looked at him calmly. Senior Linglong's previous karma was really suppressed by you, right? This matter is a little complicated to talk about. At that time, I didn't know that my physique could suppress bad luck. Later, I learned that Sister Linling transferred the misfortune of the sect master to herself, so that she was haunted by karma. I was anxious. He was not worried that Linling would open his mouth to cause trouble at this time. On the way here, Musian told her that the clip of suppressing the karmic fire.mp4 was a secret between the two of them. Linling was holding a crystal elbow at the time. Agreed very obediently. In the end, who would have thought that Miss Linglong, who never fought or grabbed, would actually call him Mulang in front of the senior sisters and the others. When Lan Mulian heard the previous words, she was still sneering at first, but at the end of the story, a trace of surprise flashed across her eyes, and she said in disbelief, "Master is plagued by bad luck." Lan Feiying was also a little surprised and said softly, "How is it possible? People's luck is not fixed. Why did bad luck happen to her out of thin air?" Originally, Sister Linling's karmic fire was almost suppressed, but due to bad luck, the karmic fire almost broke out. Musian shook his head gently. "I don't know the specific situation. I only learned about it from Sister Linling after she came to the Blue Clan a few days ago." Lan Mulian's eyes subconsciously fell on Linling. "Master, she is old, how is she doing now? Did senior sister just want to talk about her old man?" Unexpectedly, the normally cold, arrogant, and noble senior sister would sometimes feel scared. Musian cursed in her heart. For a moment, the two sisters' attention was smoothly transferred from the title Mulang to concubine Shangyan. Linling held up the small notebook. "She's fine now, don't worry. Her bad luck has been temporarily suppressed." Temporarily suppressed? It seems that Sister Linling really knows a lot about the sect leader's sister. Musian saw the huge amount of information in these words and thought secretly in his heart. Lan Mulian breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, and soon began to think, why is Master always so troubled by bad luck? After being in contact with concubine Shangyan for so long, Lan Mulian still couldn't see through this master. She had never felt this even from any Hedeo master in the past. That master may not be able to read minds, but he can always see through other people's thoughts. He has never won against her, maybe because of this. How could such a gorgeous woman be troubled by bad luck? "How is Senior Spirit Dragon doing now?" Lan Mulian suddenly asked. "You transferred Master's misfortune to yourself, will it be okay?" Linling shook her head. "AAA. I'm fine." Musian saw that the atmosphere had calmed down smoothly, and he was about to breathe a sigh of relief. At this time, he saw Linling continuing to write, "He has helped me a lot these days, so the fire of karma has been suppressed." "Sister Linling, did you really not do this on purpose?" Musian's heart, which had just been relieved, suddenly rose again, and the little soul in his body roared softly, like he was on a roller coaster. "Oh." Lan Mulian became a little more interested, and her cold voice slowed down a little, and she said softly, "If you think about it carefully, Junior brother has helped many women in the past, but he didn't expect that even Senior Linglong can help today. I don't know what exactly you did." Musian glanced at Linling subconsciously. Linling glanced at him and held up the notebook. "This is our secret." Musian was desperate. It seemed that he said nothing, but in fact he said everything. If he said this, let alone that he and Linling had practiced dual cultivation, even if they had not practiced dual cultivation, they would be misunderstood by the two. A sneer came from the side, and Musian immediately looked at the cold and noble little white dress beside him. She looked at this half-hearted guy with a blank expression and cold eyes. Lan Feiying's face was cold, and she also turned her face away. Too lazy to look at him. There was no way, I had to stand at attention when I was beaten. Musian sighed in his heart and had to take Lin Ling away first. Although Senior Linglong is in the Hedeo realm, he is not experienced in the world. Take good care of yourself, junior brother. At this time, a cold and arrogant voice suddenly came from behind. Lan Mulian's cold face was expressionless, revealing a look that was even colder than before. Musian was silent for a moment, and then sent a message to the two sisters. Today, Sister Lin Ling and I went to the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. Lan Mulian's beautiful eyes, as clear as a cold pond, flickered slightly. She opened her mouth slightly and looked at Musian subconsciously, and her curiosity was successfully drawn out. What happened today is related to him. Lan Feiying also realized something, and glanced at Musian inconspicuously. Very good, they are curious, and my broken chapter is very successful. Musian did not continue to explain. Seeing that the two of them wanted to ask the reason but couldn't bring themselves to do it, he finally felt relieved and left with Lin Ling. Leaving the vicinity of the main hall, Lin Ling's beautiful face suddenly showed a trace of uneasiness, and subconsciously glanced at Musian. AAA. She gently tugged at the corner of Musian's clothes. What's the matter? Musian asked unhappily. Then, seeing her look as pitiful as a kitten abandoned by its owner, he felt a little sorry and said, Sister Lin Ling made me suffer today. Sorry. Lin Ling immediately raised the small notebook. I will be unhappy when I see you being intimate with others. You told me that sometimes you should know how to do whatever you want and not consider you in everything. But it seems that it will cause you trouble. It will definitely. Musian had just finished speaking when he saw Lin Ling's dim eyes, and his eyes twitched slightly. He reached out and touched her silver hair again. But you did a great job. I made you unhappy, but you did a great job. Lin Ling tilted her head. Musian also tilted his head. Why do you want to make me happy? Isn't it okay as long as you are happy? Did you call me like this on purpose today? Musian suddenly asked. Lin Ling nodded gently. Do you know what Mulang means? I don't know, but I can guess. Lin Ling wrote. She is not stupid, but she looks silly and cute on weekdays. Musian stood in the rain and looked at her, speechless for a long time. As the night deepened, Musian returned to the house, lit a candle, sat in front of the window and looked at the rain outside. The darkness was so deep that when looking out from the window, it made people feel as if no matter how anxious they were, they could calm down. Musian reached out and took out the ancient bell in his hand, with a thoughtful look in his eyes, and began to sort out the information he had obtained in the past few days. There is no doubt that the backhand left by the nine-tailed sky fox in Dongzhou in the past was definitely related to the Blue Clan. It can even be confirmed that the spirit of the nine-tailed sky fox is in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. The question now is whether the senior leaders of the Blue Clan knew about this. If they knew, why didn't they deal with the spirit of the nine-tailed sky fox earlier, but instead kept her in the ancestral land, or even worship her? During the ancestral worship ceremony, an oracle would descend from the ancestral land every time, and the one who performed this magical power was not the ancestor of the Lan family, but most likely the nine-tailed sky fox. This is not only collusion with demon cultivators, but even a demon cultivator of the Hedeo realm. If this secret is exposed, the Lan family will not be as simple as being condemned by everyone. This involves the issue of position. It seems that the Qingyu Holy Land probably knows some secrets, so it secretly colluded with the elders of the Lan family and planned to make a big fuss during the ancestral worship ceremony. After all, the demonic energy of the nine-tailed sky fox is so huge that even if there is a formation to suppress it, they will definitely find a way to let the demonic energy overflow. Once everyone in Dongzhou knows about this, the Lan family at that time will probably be attacked by a group of ancient families. Musian sighed lightly and tried to collect his thoughts. At the moment, he couldn't think of a solution for the time being, so he could only take a long-term view. Musian raised his fingertips, and the next moment, a ruler emitting a soft halo appeared in his vision. The heaven-measured ruler, the ancestral weapon of the Lord of Heaven in the past, contains special divinity, and now has become Musian's weapon. If I use the separation power of the heaven-measured ruler, I wonder if I can separate the evil spirits emanating from the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. Musian whispered to himself. Then, he quickly shook his head and rejected this idea. If he was in the Return to Void realm, he might be able to do it with the heaven-measured ruler, but he was only one step away from refining the spirit and returning to cultivation. But this one step away, it is unknown how long it will take to step on it. Just as he was about to put away the heaven-measured ruler, at this moment, Musian's attention was suddenly attracted by the ruler of the heaven-measured ruler. There were a total of 9 imprints on the ruler that emitted a faint white light, and at this moment, 4 of the imprints had ancient characters emerging. This text seems to be from a certain dynasty. Although I am not illiterate, I can't understand what is written on it. Musian had doubts in his heart and tried to inject a ray of spiritual energy into the measuring ruler. Buzz. The next moment, there was a vibration in the entire space, and Musian could feel that the first rune of the sky ruler lit up with a cyan halo. The rain curtain outside suddenly disappeared. Musian's thoughts moved slightly. When he looked up, he found that the rain outside was stagnant in mid-air, like a picture scroll, and no longer dripped down. It was quiet all around, without any sound. This rune involves the power of time, and can it be used by me? Musian was surprised and happy. At this moment, he suddenly felt a strong sense of dizziness. The spiritual energy in the cauldron was drained out in an instant. It was as if he had practiced double cultivation with others for 3 days and 3 nights. Suddenly, I feel like vomiting. Musian hurriedly put away the measuring ruler, time began to flow again, and he was already sweating profusely. An elegant and clear singing voice came from beside me, AAA. Linling held the teacup and handed it to Musian with concern in her eyes. Thank you. Musian forced a smile and took the teacup. The fingers are trembling a little. Are you okay? Linling half crouched beside him, poking at the chain on Musian's hand with her fingers, and continued to write in the notebook. Were you practicing the exercises just now? Why did your weapons deteriorate? Musian lowered his head and saw that the measuring ruler in his hand had collapsed like his master at some point, and had changed from the ruler back to its original chain form. It's nothing serious, I'm just too focused on practicing, Musian said with a smile. Linling nodded and gently stroked the smooth surface of Wenchunsuo with her fingers. Looks like a necklace, she wrote in her little notebook. Musian unlocked the Wenchun lock and hung it on Linling's jade neck. It looks like it's really a necklace. Musian was a little surprised. He stretched out his hand and gently touched the smooth surface of Wenchunsuo. He gently pulled the necklace, and Linling's face immediately moved closer to him. Seeing this, Musian couldn't help but take a few more glances at the silver-haired beauty squatting beside him. As if to hide it, he coughed lightly and said, "Let me untie it for you." Linling raised her head and blinked her clear red eyes, tilted her head to look at him, and wrote in a small notebook, "Did holding my hand like that just now make you excited?" Musian said calmly, "Why do you ask so suddenly? Your heart was beating very fast just now." Linling's innocent red eyes looked at Musian. "Do you like me wearing a necklace?" "That's not a necklace." Musian looked at her pure and beautiful face silently, complaining silently in his heart. "No, I have to calm down. If Sister Sect Leader knew that I bullied Sister Linling like this, she might slap me." He quickly suppressed the many thoughts that came up in his heart and silently took the Wenchun lock back into the ring. "It's not that I like her, I just think Sister Linling looks good in whatever she wears." He quickly smiled. Linling's face turned red and she lowered her head shyly, then buried her face in Musian's arms and half knelt beside him. This is not a spiritual dragon, it is clearly a docile cat, Musian thought. Many cats are like this. They like to cling to their owners and occasionally lick their owners' faces or step on their legs. After a while, Lin Ling raised her head and looked at him. You seem to be worried about something. Is it because of what happened in the ancestral land tonight? Musian said softly, the Blue Clan's affairs have nothing to do with me, but senior sister and sister Fei Ying are from the Blue Clan. Once something happens to the Blue Clan, I'm afraid they will be implicated. When Musian said this, his mind moved slightly. If I remember correctly, except for the first elder of the Blue Clan who agreed to the Lan sisters joining the clan, most of the other elders strongly opposed their return to the Blue Clan. Even the head of the Lan family never invited them. Could it be that the implication issue was also considered? Lin Ling lowered her head and wrote in a small notebook, is there any way you can help them? I watched Lianer grow up, and I want to help her. Musian sighed softly, the affairs of the Blue Clan are their business after all. It is not convenient for outsiders like us to interfere, even if I remind them to be careful of the insider, I am afraid they will not believe it. One is the great elder of the Blue Clan, and the other is just an outsider. Who will the Blue Clan believe? The answer is self-evident. However, once the nine-tailed Sky Fox's demonic energy is leaked on the day of the ancestor worship meeting, I'm afraid it will cause quite a trouble. Unless the evil spirit can be concealed, Musian said softly. When he said this, he was suddenly stunned for a moment, and a blue lightning flashed in his brain. Hidden evil spirit. He murmured to himself, his eyes subconsciously falling on Lin Ling. Soon, the corners of his mouth curved in an interesting way. It seems there is a way. Lin Ling blinked and looked at him, AAA. Don't worry, you'll know in a few days. Musian gently touched Lin Ling's silver hair. Compared to this, Sister Lin Ling has caused me a lot of pain today, so she has to compensate me. Under Lin Ling's doubtful gaze, Musian leaned in her ear and whispered, come into my arms. 1W completed today, woohoo. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 453. On a rainy day, near dawn, Musian changed his robe and exhaled a breath of fresh air. Glancing at the bed behind him, Lin Ling was covered with the quilt, her whole body was hidden in the quilt, only a silver hair was exposed, and her little hand gently grasped the corner of the quilt. She was awake now, but still a little embarrassed. No wonder, even if Musian thought of what happened last night, he couldn't help but be moved. Well, although he and Lin Ling had practiced together several times, they had not developed many ways to play. As an old driver who had been in the flower garden for many years, Musian knew a lot of tricks and could slowly guide Lin Ling, so he probably wouldn't be too bored for a long time. After all, the so-called suppression of karma fire does not necessarily require the exchange of body fluids in body tissues. Anyway, the ultimate goal is to let the heavenly aura of the natural furnace flow out. Yes, no matter what method is used, as long as the aura of the natural furnace can flow out in the end, it is enough. Although Lin Ling was unwilling to accept some of Musian's small requests last night, Musian was not in a hurry. Anyway, if he lets go once, there will be countless times in the future. In this way, I have lived up to the kindness of the sect master's sister. Musian sat at the table, wrote a reply to concubine Shang Yan, folded it into a paper crane, and gently threw it out of the window. He was in a very good mood. After changing into a white robe, he glanced at the silver-haired beauty in the bedding, walked up and patted her shoulder gently. Ling, do you want to have breakfast? I'll prepare it for you. AAA, Lin Ling grabbed the sheets with her little hands, most of her face was hidden under the sheets, and a pair of faint little eyes stared at him vigilantly. Musian was stunned, then smiled, and said, it's not the snack from last night, it's a normal snack. Feeling her resentful eyes, Musian's heart was slightly moved. He sat on the bed, gently rubbed Lin Ling's head, and whispered, "If you don't want to, I won't let you try it next time." Lin Ling blushed and buried her face in the pillow silently. Then, she put the small notebook on Musian's legs. "I don't like it, but I don't hate it. If you will be very happy, you can try it again next time. Linger is so nice." Musian reached out and gently stroked her silver hair, sighing from the bottom of his heart. This feeling of slowly dyeing a piece of white paper with your own color is really hard to refuse. The most important thing is that she will not refuse herself either, and she is very well behaved, which Musian has never experienced in the past. After all, the fish in the fish pond are beautiful, but they are too fierce. This is not surprising. They are all geniuses of their generation. They are all top-notch in realm and talent. They are naturally arrogant. How could they share a Taoist partner with other women? But Miss Linglong is different. She doesn't mind, or rather, she has no desire to fight with others. Of course, the premise is not to make her angry. But under normal circumstances, Lin Ling is still very well behaved and lovely. "Or taste something else before breakfast," Musian suddenly suggested, wanting her to be a girl with good food. He could smell the fragrance of Lin Ling's fresh bath, which was because she took a bath after the end of last night. AAA Lin Ling shook her head gently, her pretty face flushed, biting her lower lip lightly, as if she was recalling everything last night, and she was even more shy at this moment. "Does this mean you agree?" Musian deliberately teased. He understood that Lin Ling was refusing. Lin Ling glanced at him and shook her head shyly. "AAA. That's not what I taught you last night. You have to say you like it very much," Musian said seriously. Looking at the shy and cute girl, Musian couldn't help but smile smugly. He was about to flirt with her again, when Lin Ling suddenly opened her red lips. Then, a clear and pleasant voice came from the room. "Musian will have no desires in the next 7 days." The smile on Musian's face froze. "I didn't expect to make her angry. I hope she can help me solve this word spirit tonight." After leaving the room and entering the study, Musian sat in front of the windowsill and looked at the rain outside, and couldn't help but sigh. "You deserve it. You think she's a well-behaved little white rabbit, but even a little white rabbit will bite you when she gets angry." Ye Qingxin's lazy voice came from the depths of the Tiansheng furnace. "Linglong has always followed Shang Yanfei, so he still has a temper." Musian was stunned at first, then hesitated and said, "Sister Ye knows what happened just now. It stands to reason that the Tiansheng furnace should be in a state where you can't see the outside from the inside." As if knowing what Musian was thinking, Ye Qingxin smiled lightly and said, "You have lost so much spiritual energy in your Tiansheng furnace in the past few days. I am in your Tiansheng furnace every day. Can't I feel it?" Musian said calmly, "So, Sister Ye knows about what happened to me in the past few days." Ye Qingxin sat in the void, playing with a strand of hair, and said nonchalantly, "If you mean that you and Lin Ling practiced dual cultivation, although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I did know it." "Sister Ye doesn't blame me?" Musian asked. "Spiritual dragon is trapped by the fire of karma. If you don't help her, she can only choose to practice in seclusion for 1,000 years. 1,000 years is not long, but it is enough to turn most of the acquaintances around her into old faces. I know you, he is a good boy with a kind heart, and he will definitely not be willing to let her go." Musian was silent for a moment. "Linger helped me a lot in the past. You don't have to feel guilty towards me. After all, you and I are not Taoist couples. Even if you are intimate with other female cultivators, I am not qualified to say anything. I am not here to accuse you." Ye Qingxin sat in the void, swaying her crystal clear white jade feet under her black and red dress. She raised her eyes and said lazily, "It's just that lately I feel vaguely that there seems to be an ominous atmosphere outside. You must be careful in everything. Sister Ye refers to the evil spirit in the ancestral land of the Blue Tribe, Musian asked. It has nothing to do with the Blue Clan, but something is wrong with the rules of this world. Ye Kingzin paused. After the ancestor worship meeting, you will not be in any danger for the time being. After that, I plan to go to the restricted area to visit a few people. Old acquaintance, I would like to investigate the rules of this world. As for your true identity, when should I let you go down to the lower realm? Musian said hesitantly. After the Blue Clan Ancestor Worship Conference, you should return to the sect to practice for a while. I will come back to you during this period, Ye Kingzin said. That's fine. Sister Ye has her own plans, and I can't stop her. Musian smiled and said, but I just hope that Sister Ye can remember that no matter when, I will always wait for you to come back. The woman in the body suddenly fell silent. At this time, Musian suddenly said, does Sister Ye know what happened last night? Ye Kingzin shook his head, I have never heard of it, but when I was practicing, I felt a strong evil spirit. When Musian heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. When I inherited the demon throne, I promised the nine-tailed sky fox that I would find her spiritual consciousness and find a way to recreate the demon body for her. But the nine-tailed sky fox's spiritual consciousness is in the sculpture of the ancestor of the Lan family. It can only be retrieved during the ancestor worship meeting. I don't know how many evil spirits in the Lan family's ancestral land will be destroyed this time. People use it to make a big fuss. Musian paused for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, that's all, I don't know why I complain today. I will find a way to recover the nine-tailed fox's spiritual consciousness during the ancestor worship meeting. At this time, a ray of red gold firelight lit up silently in the study. Don't you just want to wait for me to open my mouth and help you recover the nine-tailed fox's spiritual consciousness? With the friendship between you and me, you can just say so. Ye Kingzin was dressed in a black and red dress, bathed in red gold flames, and looked particularly divine. A smile appeared on her lips as she looked at the docile boy sitting at the door. Although the aura is restrained, it still exudes a powerful and terrifying spiritual pressure. This is not a return to the void, but a power close to Hedeo. In the past, Ye Kingzin's clone was close to the state of enlightenment. If she burned her essence, she could briefly enter the realm of harmony. But now that the rules of heaven and earth have completely changed, and the spiritual energy between heaven and earth has changed, her strength has also become stronger. Musian shook his head slightly and said with a wry smile, I really hope that Sister Ye can help me, but this is a matter of the Blue Clan. If Sister Ye refuses, I have nothing to say. Ye Kingzin casually walked to the desk, sat down with her skirt, lowered her head and looked down at the young man's handsome face, with a hint of joking in her expression. The spiritual consciousness of the nine-tailed sky fox does involve the Blue Clan, but more importantly what's important is that the two girls from the Blue Clan are involved. If I take action then, on the surface I will be helping the Blue Clan, but in reality I will be helping my two love rivals for no reason. So, I shouldn't do this favor either emotionally or rationally. She looked at the boy who remained silent, casually put her feet on his shoulders, and said with a smile, you don't seem disappointed at all. I know Sister Ye hasn't finished speaking yet, Musian said with a smile. Ye Kingzin narrowed her eyes and lightly traced Musian's shoulder with her toes. She supported the table with one hand and looked down at him. A trace of pleasure flashed in her eyes, you can beg me. If I make my sister happy, I will find a way to satisfy you whatever you want. Musian silently looked up at the woman close at hand. Fairy-like and jade-like, bright and moving, her plump and rosy mouth opened slightly, and a seductive breath seemed to be exhaled from her mouth. There was a hint of teasing smile in her coquettish eyes. If it were normal, Musian's heartbeat would probably have accelerated at this moment, and it would be even less possible for him to be so patient. But at this moment, Musian has no desires or desires. Linger's words were too outrageous. Musian looked at the beautiful ancestors of the Ye clan and those enchanting eyes, but he had no desire at all, and his mentality collapsed for a moment. He opened his mouth slightly, as if he was planning to say something. Just kidding. At this time, Yekingzin stretched out her green jade fingers and gently tapped Musian's lips, and said with a smile, "The Blue Clan's Ancestor Worship Conference, if necessary, I will help you with this." She raised her hand and caressed Musian's face, her seductive red eyes filled with seductive charm, "But you should understand what exactly we have to do to make up for it, right?" These words sound like a book. Musian subconsciously reached out to hold her waist, but the next moment, Yekingzin quietly left his arms and said with a sweet smile, "Don't worry, now is not the time. After all, I still want to leave the best experience to my real body." Yekingzin put her red lips close to the young man's ear and breathed out like a blue, "When the time comes, let's go to Kingdi's retreat room and play slowly." Musian's mood was shaken, but almost at that moment, the magic of spiritual speech took effect, and his desire that was about to move was instantly cleared. This feeling was too uncomfortable. He had clearly developed a desire for Yekingzin, but there was a mysterious force that was dispelling his thoughts. If Sister Linling wants to play with her, wouldn't she make me die of pain? Musian thought of this extremely terrifying thing. Yekingzin looked at the young man with a half-smile, and said softly, "Yanling is really miraculous, to be able to do this. But I'm curious, if your desires reach the extreme, whether Yanling can continue to limit your desires." The moment the words fell, red gold flames burned on Yekingzin's body. The next moment, the flames dissipated, and her body was covered with a blue dress as thin as gauze. "Is this Yao Meng's dress?" Musian said in surprise. "I prepared one when I went to Yezhou before. Does it look good?" Yekingzin walked around in front of Musian, but there was no sense of disobedience at all. Instead, she added a bit of cold and fairy aura to her coquettishness. Although she looked a little shy, there was more of an indescribable joy in her heart. Wearing Qing Emperor's clothes and even being intimate with Qing Emperor's husband, this feeling is really hard to refuse. Musian sighed sincerely, "She is very beautiful, no less than Yao Meng." Hearing this, Yekingzin couldn't help but reveal an uncontrollable smile. Then, she reached out and gently touched Musian's face, then suddenly stood up on her toes and kissed Musian gently on the lips. Musian couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then said via voice transmission, "Sister Ye didn't say that she wanted to leave the experience to her real body." "Yes." Yekingzin hooked her hands around his neck and chuckled, "I want to leave the wonderful experience to the real body, but that doesn't mean I can't taste some desserts now." Evening. Linling sat on the couch with her legs slanted, her eyes slightly closed, and the furnace in her body was slowly turning. The cave in her cauldron is connected to the avenue, which also allows her to have a steady stream of spiritual energy flowing in the cauldron. However, in addition to this, Linling's furnace now has an additional spiritual energy that is different from the avenue. That is the aura originating from heaven. Whenever the fire of karma burns in the cauldron, the aura of heaven will silently suppress the fire of karma, and so on. When half of her cauldron is made up of Musian's spiritual energy, the fire of karma will be completely suppressed. In fact, given Linling's current state, if he didn't use his speech spirit frequently, the fire of karma would not come back to bite him. However, whether it was because of being teased by Musian this morning or something else, the karmic fire that had been suppressed in the past few days was now constantly rising. The burning karma fire kept rising, her cheeks gradually became hot, her breathing became heavier, her beautiful eyebrows were lightly frowned, trying her best to fight against the karma fire. After an unknown amount of time, she slowly opened her eyes. Her beautiful eyes were watery and blurred. She couldn't help but rub her legs, and subconsciously looked in the direction of the study to the side. "I can't stand it. Sister Ye is getting more and more feverish. She really can't stand it." In the evening, Musian was exhausted physically and mentally, feeling pain and happiness at the same time. The effect of Lin Ling's word spirit was so strong that even when he was intimate with Ye Qingxin, he would have thoughts that would disappear inexplicably several times. I'm super. If Linger asks me to maintain the sage mode for a year, wouldn't I have to hold it in for a year? Musian suddenly remembered this horrifying thing and instantly became energetic. Then, he quickly breathed a sigh of relief. Don't panic, unlike any fish in the fish pond, Lin Ling is an innocent and ignorant girl. She doesn't like to fight, so she won't do such outrageous things. If it were Yao Meng, Musian would probably have to be used privately by a public car, changing from a bus to a private car. When he came to the closed hut and saw the flickering candlelight in the house, Musian knew that Miss Linglong was still in his house, so he did not disturb her and found an empty room by himself to meditate and practice. It is actually a kind of fun to calm down and meditate occasionally. The time came to midnight unknowingly, and Musian suddenly heard a slight commotion coming from the window sill. He glanced at the door calmly, and caught a silver hair in the corner of his eye. Musian closed his eyes calmly and pretended to concentrate on his practice. AAA. At this time, he heard a shy voice coming from his ears. He opened his eyes and saw Lin Ling, who was holding the bed with his hands and looking directly at him. What's wrong? I'm still meditating, Musian asked strangely. There's something wrong with her state. Could it be that she's suffering from the backlash of karma? At the same time as he spoke, Musian secretly observed Lin Ling's condition. There were indeed signs of backlash from the karmic fire, but it was not as serious as in the past. Lin Ling blushed, gently pulled the corner of Musian's clothes, and looked at him with moist eyes. As she said that, she handed Musian a meat bun. You just bribed me with a meat bun to make me work, Musian couldn't help but complain in his heart, and said reservedly, Linger, have you forgotten that my desire was just blocked by your words today? He wanted to tease Lin Ling for a while, but at this time, the silver-haired beauty seemed to lose patience, and her red lips opened slightly. Musian will be obsessed with me tonight and can't extricate himself. Musian. I always feel that Linger is the man, and I am the woman she sleeps with. She kicks me out when she enters the sage mode, and wants to sleep with me when she has desires, Musian complained in his heart. But the next moment, his eyes were uncontrollably attracted to her. His wrist was held down by Lin Ling. The silver-haired beauty's clear red eyes were now shining with a strange light, and her pink lips were faintly shiny under the candlelight. She pursed her plump lips, and then slowly approached him under Musian's gaze. Musian could clearly feel the tenderness of the girl's body in his arms, her accelerated heartbeat, and even the charming fragrance lingering on his nose. Everything seemed extremely real. His hand, which was originally suspended in the air, finally hugged her plump waist. Then he lowered his head and kissed her soft lips. Lianji Peak. A paper crane emitting a white light flew into Lianji sect and flew towards the back mountain of Lianji Peak. The woman in black clothes raised her fingertips, twisted the paper crane, and opened it casually. The content of the letter paper appeared in his vision. She only took a glance and then casually put the paper crane away, and then her eyes fell on the bronze mirror on the table. In the bronze mirror, all the beautiful scenes at this moment were reflected in Shang Yanfei's vision. She looked at the silver-haired beauty in the mirror, and the boy who was suppressed by her, and couldn't help but sighed faintly. Shang Yanfei remembered the scene when she first saw Linglong. Linglong was originally the most beloved creation of God, a creature bred by the Tao, born with the strongest and most violent ability, the word spirit. However, at that time, Linglong could not control the word spirit, and often caused a lot of trouble because he could not control his own power. Therefore, people were afraid of him wherever he went. Later, she took Linglong in, kept him by her side, and named him Lin Ling. Less than 1,000 years later, Linglong broke through and realized the Tao, gave up the three ways of heaven, earth, and man, chose to resonate with the Tao, and achieved the state of unity. It was also from that time that Linglong realized that the heavenly qi in Shang Yanfei's body was restraining her, so he used the word spirit to transfer 3 portions of heavenly qi into his body. Linglong, who was already troubled by the fire of karma, had to retreat in the cave to suppress the fire of karma. Until one day, Musian appeared, and everything began to change gradually. A little stuck, rest early tonight, adjust tomorrow. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 454. Late at night, the old village was quiet, with only 1 or 2 dog barks coming from time to time. There are not many entertainment activities in this world. For most mortals, at this time, they basically go into the house to rest. However, at this moment, in a slightly old and dilapidated house, it seems quite lively. The girl in a black skirt and a pair of black high heels looked at the boy who was in a coma, frowned slightly, and seemed very dissatisfied. Beside Huang Manting, there were several old people standing. If you look closely, you will find that each of them has some injuries on their bodies. It is said that they offended people when they were young and were hunted down. Later, they became half-disabled and planned to live out their lives in this village. Huang Manting couldn't bear it at the time, so she asked her father to ask the Don Chamber of Commerce to send supplies every month to prevent these disabled old ladies and grandfathers from starving to death in the village. All along, the village has been peaceful. However, with the appearance of Huang Weifeng today, the future peace may be broken. Manting, don't be angry. Weifeng grew up in the village. It is reasonable for him to recuperate in the village after being injured these days. Yes, although you are not siblings, you grew up together in the village after all. Several elders spoke up and comforted Huang Manting in a friendly voice. After finishing the training in Lianji sect 2 days ago, Huang Manting accidentally heard the disciples of the nearby sect mention that a teenager offended the Blue Clan and was taken away by a mysterious powerful person. She asked a few more questions out of curiosity. After hearing about the other party's appearance and dress, Huang Manting was almost certain that this person was Huang Weifeng. So she hurried back to the village and confirmed her guess. In the past, Huang Manting was a child who grew up in the village, and at that time Huang Weifeng's parents had passed away, and the elderly in the village occasionally helped to take care of him. The children in the village had a good relationship with each other, but after Mr. Wang's business started to improve, he moved out of the village, and Huang Manting's relationship with the children in the village became a little distant. However, the Don Chamber of Commerce has never treated the original village badly since its development, and several old people in the village treat Huang Manting like their own granddaughter. But now, Huang Weifeng not only offended the Blue Clan, but also ran back to this village. If the Blue Clan finds out, it will probably cause a lot of trouble for the village. In fact, it's not the fault of Weifeng, the child. At that time, an immortal rescued him and brought him back to the village. An old lady spoke slowly and unhurriedly, and her turbid eyes inadvertently glanced at the lame old man next to her. Huang Manting's eyes moved slightly, obviously she had heard about this matter, and asked, I heard that he was surrounded by the people of the Blue Clan at that time, and a mysterious powerful person rescued him. The white-haired old man with a lame leg hummed, I don't know where the gods came from to save him and bring him back to the village. Huang Manting frowned inadvertently. He also offended Musian, right? Who is Musian? A teenager in the village who didn't have internet access asked in confusion. The Qing Emperor got married some time ago, and it was Musian who married the Qing Emperor. Huang Weifeng offended him when he was in the Blue Clan, and I'm afraid he will cause a lot of trouble later. Huang Manting just said this when she suddenly heard a painful sound. She glanced and saw Huang Weifeng woke up from his coma, suddenly opened his eyes, sat down on the bed, and gasped for breath. Then, there was confusion and gradual anger. Where is this place? Why am I here? Where is Musian? Seeing Huang Weifeng's stupid look, several young people in the village laughed at him. He is really a fool. Why did he have to offend the Blue Clan? What if the village is implicated in the future? He is not good at doing things, but he is more likely to cause trouble for the village. He was a waste in cultivation before. He can't do anything, but he has to cause trouble for the village. Huang Manting also frowned slightly, with an unknown anger in her heart. He caused such a big thing, but now he looks fine. If it weren't for the fact that several elders in the village were here, she would have taught this guy a lesson. So that's it, I was in danger at that time, and I was rescued by a mysterious powerful person. Musean, he seems to have a powerful spiritual consciousness in his body. Huang Weifeng muttered to himself in his heart, recalling what happened a few days ago, and a gleam of brilliance soon flashed in his eyes. After all, I am the chosen one, the protagonist of this world, and I will not die so easily. But who is this Musean? He can burst out with a power stronger than mine. Should I say that he is worthy of being a villain in the early stage? You are safe in the village. The people of the Blue Tribe will not notice that you are here. You should practice in the village with peace of mind in the future. Daoku Tianzun spoke in a gentle voice. Even though many people in the village did not want Huang Weifeng to stay in the village not long ago, he still insisted on protecting Huang Weifeng. After all, he and Huang Weifeng's parents are old acquaintances, and he promised to take care of Huang Weifeng before. I know. Huang Weifeng nodded gently, and never apologized to the village from beginning to end. First, they are not worth asking him to apologize, and second, he does not intend to stay in such a place. After all, if he practices in the village, will he have a chance to succeed in the future? If you don't go out to experience, you will never make progress if you stay in this twilight village. Mr. Huang, you have caused so much trouble to the village, don't you have anything to say? At this time, Huang Manting finally couldn't bear it anymore, raised her eyebrows slightly, and glanced at him inadvertently. As the daughter of a businessman, Huang Manting rarely offends people directly, but Huang Weifeng's attitude at the moment really made her unbearable. Seeing Huang Manting's outstanding appearance now, Huang Weifeng was amazed at first, but then he noticed the unfriendly eyes of the black-dressed beauty, and his heart became cold. He said lightly, I won't stay in the village for too long. After my injury is healed, I will leave on my own. Huang Manting glanced at him coldly, I hope so. If the elders in the village were not here, she would have exploded long ago. Daochu Tianzun looked at the scene quietly, and couldn't help but shook his head and sighed secretly. Several young men in the room looked at Huang Weifeng with even more contempt. Not only is he conceited, but he still has this attitude even though the village helped him. He is really hopeless. Huang Weifeng acted quite indifferent to these looks. After all, he has lived 2 lives and has the protection of a mysterious and powerful person behind him. Now he naturally doesn't need to bother with these people. With the golden finger and the protection of the holy light Kirin, isn't it a matter of time before he wants to step into the pinnacle of this world? As for those who mocked him today, just wait to be slapped in the face later. Daoku Tianzun looked at the confident look of the young man in silence. As a person who has experienced it, he naturally saw that Huang Weifeng didn't listen to his advice at all. But anyway, what should be done has been done. It depends on him whether he listens or not. Compared with Huang Weifeng, this girl is still kinder. He looked at Huang Manting with some emotion in his heart. Even though they didn't know their identities, they still maintained respect, and even sent supplies every month. These old guys saw this kindness. After teaching Huang Weifeng a few more words, the group left the house, and several old men gathered together and chatted. Buzz. At this time, everyone suddenly heard a buzzing sound in their ears. Several old men in the village reacted almost immediately and looked up in a certain direction in the south. Daoku Tianzun's eyes condensed slightly, and he said softly, the god of the ocean has fallen. The old lady next to him said slowly, when I offended the Green Emperor in every way, I should have thought that this would be the end. Once the god of the ocean dies, the southern wilderness may have to reshuffle, an old man next to him said. If so, the Green Emperor may have to return to Dongzhou. The first human emperor in the Yuhua realm. I don't know what she plans to do next after cleaning up the external enemies, Dao Tianzun said faintly. In his opinion, after the Qing emperor passed away, he must be ambitious. The next step may be to expand the influence of Yaokai, or even unify Dongzhou. No matter what, it has nothing to do with us old men who have half a foot in the coffin. An old voice came from the side, don't forget the reason why we chose to live in seclusion. Even so, we can't completely ignore the changes in the outside world. Otherwise, if someone discovers this village one day, even if we want to live in seclusion, I'm afraid trouble will come to us, an old man said. I think we can choose a young man to train outside. If there is really a change in the outside world in the future, we can also learn something from that person, Dao Tianzun said. If so, we must choose a child with excellent character. I think Manting is a good girl, the old lady said. Several old people were silent for a moment, and finally, they all hummed softly. Observe for a while, if there is no problem, choose her. Blue tribe. I'm so stupid, really. Musian looked at the ceiling with a distracted look, muttering to himself. He only knew that Miss Linglong was an innocent and gluttonous girl, but he didn't expect that she was completely different in the state of karma fire from her usual self. When Lin Ling didn't want to practice, Musian has no desires. When he wanted to practice, Musian is obsessed with me. This is a double-standard dragon. Musian got angry when he thought of this. He turned his head and looked at the silver-haired beauty beside him. AAA. She hugged one of Musian's arms with both hands, and rubbed her face on his arm intimately, as if looking for a comfortable place to lean on. With her eyes slightly closed, her long and curled eyelashes trembled slightly, and her fair and flawless delicate face was full of happiness and satisfaction. The heavenly spiritual energy in the body and the charming breath of the nine-tailed fox are mixed together. It is an irresistible temptation for any female cultivator. Even Lin Ling, who is not interested in cultivation, thinks it is a rare delicacy in the world. Even if you take an 8-treasure crane, you won't trade it? Musian looked at the scene in silence. After a long while, he finally sighed and gently pinched her plump waist and gently touched Lin Ling, who seemed to be in a dormant period. When suppressing the fire of karma, Lin Ling often enters this dormant state. During this period, it is difficult for others to approach because she will use the spirit of words to isolate all those who try to approach her. Musian looked at the sleeping silver-haired beauty, gently covered her with a sheet to cover her snow-white skin, and then found an empty space on the side to sit cross-legged. He still cares about the runes he saw on the measuring ruler yesterday. For some reason, he always feels that those runes look particularly familiar, especially the green rune that emitted a green light last night. That rune can make time go back. This Tao, Musian always feels familiar. Musian took out the heavenly court ring that the first generation of Demon King accidentally obtained in the past from the ring, and his spiritual consciousness escaped into the heavenly court in the next moment. He closed his eyes slightly, and almost the next moment, 9 thrones appeared in front of him. Each throne is engraved with different runes and patterns. The back of the first throne is in the shape of a lotus, and the word Lin is engraved in the lotus. The second one is an ancient sword, corresponding to Bing. The third seat is a giant python, which looks quite weird. Although it is known to be carved, just looking at it makes people feel as if they are being stared at by the giant python, with an indescribable sense of charm. In addition to the 4 thrones that have been lit up, the remaining 5 thrones are now covered by soft white mist, making it difficult to see their shapes. The 9 seats correspond to the soldiers who are in battle, all marching forward in formation. The word Lin controlled by Yao Meng can rewrite time, or even reverse it, weakening the cultivation of others. Musian looked at the 4 seats that appeared in front of him and muttered to himself thoughtfully. He took out the restored spirit of the measuring ruler. On this transparent and translucent ruler, 4 runes were quietly lit up at this moment, emitting a soft halo. The remaining 5 marks were all blurred and could not be seen clearly. Lin, Bing, Dahi, all 4 characters contain different Daos, but I can only use the word Lin now. Does this mean that only Yao Meng resonates with the new heavenly Dao and ascends to the sky? If Ruoxi and Zixuan also ascend to the sky, maybe the heavenly ruler can activate the 2 characters Bing and Do. Lin controls the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and can rewrite time, while Bing has extremely strong blood and vitality, and Do can become stronger with each battle, which is a bit like stacking buffs when fighting with others. When the last buff is reached, a slap can kill the enemy. I currently have 5 seats that I can give to others. I have to consider the order in which the seats are given first. Musian thought for a while, and after meditating and practicing in the heavenly court for an hour, he slowly exhaled. He opened his extremely clear eyes and felt an unprecedented sense of pleasure. The spiritual energy in the heavenly court is much richer than that in the 9 provinces. Even if you don't practice in the heavenly court, you can live forever. It's just a pity that through the heavenly palace ring, Musian can only step into the heavenly palace with his spiritual consciousness. After feeling the spiritual energy in his body for a while, Musian gathered his thoughts and his spiritual consciousness returned to reality. He can only practice in the heavenly palace for 1 hour every day, and now 1 hour has come. Southern Wilderness. Yao Mengling stood in the air, playing with the sea blue crystal in her hand, with a rare coldness in her eyes. It has been almost half a month since she separated from Musian. During this period, she was busy searching for the whereabouts of the god of the ocean and had no time to investigate the situation on Musian's side. In fact, it doesn't take long to deal with the god of the ocean. After all, the god of the ocean is about to die. It cut off its resonance with the heavenly Dao. It only has the strength of enlightenment. Even if it burns its essence and barely reaches the Hedao, it is just a guy that can be dealt with in a snap of a finger. But the god of the ocean is too good at hiding. He has been hiding for so long, and finally she found clues today and killed him in one fell swoop. I don't know what's going on with him, Yao Meng suddenly thought. Half a month did not make Yao Meng forget Musian. Instead, she missed him all the time, especially the Yongxian in the boy's posture. She was not worried that Musian would be threatened, but during the time she was away, Musian had been close to several female cultivators again. Just for you, you wasted so much of my time. If he was intimate with others when I went back, I would crush your consciousness 1,000 times. She said the words that frightened the ocean god in the crystal in a soft and soothing tone. Then, Yao Meng suddenly showed a faint smile, but it's not just me who misses him. He's probably thinking about me like me, right? When she thought of this, Yao Meng pursed her pink lips, her beautiful eyes were filled with a passionate luster, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She was looking forward to meeting Musian again. Compared to boring things like cultivation, it's more interesting to be with him. She raised her fingertips, and a petal of the pure blue lotus silently immersed itself into the ocean crystals, completely suppressing the ocean god. The next moment, the blue figure had turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the southern wilderness. Fecund Garden. Musian's consciousness returned from the heavens, and feeling the soft body in his arms, he subconsciously reached out to hug her waist along her dress, and buried his face in her arms. Lin Ling stroked his head and said, your consciousness didn't seem to be in the room just now, where did it go? It's okay, I just meditated for a while, Musian explained with a smile. Lin Ling didn't seem to care much about pursuing the truth, and nodded gently, as if enjoying the comfort of the morning. After a while, she seemed to have noticed the boy's movement, her pretty face slightly blushed, she rubbed her beautiful legs a little embarrassedly, and held up the small notebook to show Musian, Why do you think about doing bad things every day? Muzian looked at the silver-haired beauty with a smile on his face. I think about doing bad things. My dear Ling do you remember what you did last night? Lin Ling was slightly startled, then turned her face away and whistled silently. Seeing this, Muzian looked at her full chest that could hardly be covered by her white dress, and suddenly said, speaking of which, we haven't had breakfast today, and I'm a little hungry. Do you want to try my suggestion last time? AAA, Lin Ling made a confused sound, and then her eyes followed Muzian's eyes and fell on her chest. After a brief moment of confusion, she seemed to understand something, her pretty face slightly blushed, and she glanced at Muzian with resentment. Noticing the resentful look of the silver-haired beauty, Muzian was already overjoyed. Whenever he saw Lin Ling's shy look, he felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. Just a joke. It's not too late to tell you when you want to, Muzian said with a smile. Then, he put his arm around Lin Ling's waist, closed his eyes slightly, and kissed her red lips gently. Just at this moment, a ray of green light silently lit up in the room. The light was fleeting, as if it had never appeared. Muzian lowered his head and occupied her rosy lips. The lips were soft, with a faint and cool fragrance, which was simply refreshing. Muzian was suddenly startled and noticed something wrong. Although Lin Ling had a faint fragrance on her body, that body fragrance was different from the fragrance at this moment. This is not Miss Ling Long. Then the question is, who is the person in his arms now? Muzian suddenly opened his eyes in doubt. The stunning face of Fairy Yao Meng appeared in his sight. She was like a snow lotus in the morning mist, exuding an unattainable cool breath. Why are you staring at me so strangely? Lin Ziun when can make time go back, don't you know? Yao Meng smiled, rested her head on his shoulder, and joked, or, the person you love is not Lin Ling who disappointed you. Yao Meng. Muzian's heart was almost pounding at that moment, and his brain was in a state of shutdown. Do you want to ask me why I am here? Before Muzian could speak, Yao Meng had already answered for him. The god of the ocean has been suppressed by me, so I used space magic to come back to find you. Behind her was a space door, and it was obvious that she had just used this door to reach the Blue Clan. I thought you should be missing me, but it seems that you have a new love during this period of time. Yao Meng looked straight at the silver-haired beauty standing beside the bed with a smile. The spirit dragon is a creature of destiny favored by heaven. If you are intimate with her, even the great Dao can feel it. You are really brave, and you are not afraid of being punished by the great Dao. If the Sabbath comes and punishes you, I may not be able to protect you. Muzian finally reacted, coughed lightly, and said shyly, she was entangled in the fire of karma some time ago, so the spiritual energy of the heaven is needed to suppress the fire of karma. Yao Meng glanced at the silver-haired beauty beside her thoughtfully, and said with a smile, I'm sorry to trouble you to take care of my husband during this period, and leave it to me from now on. Her eyes were indifferent, as if she was saying something casually, just reaching out and gently stroking Muzian's hair, and naturally occupied Lin Ling's position. This scene also made Lin Ling frown, and raised the small notebook unwillingly. He needs my help after this. She continued to write, but you can't. In Yao Meng's ears, this can be said to be an undisguised provocation. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows slightly, and smiled lightly. Ling Long, although you have been with Shang Yanfei for many years in the past, you are also in the Hedao realm. Is there anything you can do that I can't do? It seems that Lin Ling just relied on her natural cuteness to confuse Muzian. Now that she has seen her legal wife, she can still say you can't help? Although there is no difference in strength between the Yahua realm and the Hedao realm, in this world, the Yahua realm is stronger than the Hedao. After all, Yahua is not bound by the rules of heaven and earth. At this time, Lin Ling held up the small notebook and asked, can you give him luck? Can you give him 3 portions of heavenly energy? He needs to forge the demon energy at the ancestral worship meeting. Can you forge the demon energy of the Hedeo realm? The room fell into a brief silence. Lin Ling held up the notebook and showed it to Yao Meng, who was silent for a moment, and added the final blow, "You can't do it, but I can. So I can help him, but you can't." The indifferent smile on Yao Meng's face finally faded slowly. Today's 6K is over, please vote. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 455. Misty rain fell from the night, and the house fell into a long silence. Lin Ling blinked her clear red eyes and stared straight at Yao Meng, glancing at Musian's body with great concern. Musian was still in a state of shock, and his heart was full of surprise. That Miss Ling Long, who is usually obedient, actually still has such a radical attitude. Yao Meng was silent for an unknown length of time, and suddenly raised her eyebrows inadvertently, looking at this young lady Ling Long. "Ling Long, if I remember correctly, you don't like fighting by nature. Why do you look so hostile to me? How big is it? I am just married to him, but you are so hostile to me. Could it be that you are jealous?" Lively and cheerful Lin Ling frowned rarely and remained silent. She realized that she had been a little too radical just now. Mujian and Qing Emperor got married in the Holy King City. This wedding was witnessed by 9 states. Although this was just a plan prepared for the emergence of Qing Emperor, a marriage is a marriage. Emperor Qing indeed called Musian as his husband. Everyone in Zhou knows about the marriage between Musian and King Di. Linger is indeed so kind-hearted. If it were Gong Lianyu, she might have already started to quarrel with Yao Meng. Musian looked at this scene, calm on the surface, but actually he was frightened. At this time, the corners of Yao Meng's lips curled up slightly, a faint smile appeared, and she continued to attack. "Could it be that you, like others, are also coveting my husband's body, hoping to keep him by your side?" The room fell into a brief silence. Unfortunately, Yao Meng's combat power is much higher than that of Miss Ling Long. Musian's eyelids twitched slightly. Miss Ling Long was shy by nature, so she was naturally embarrassed to say that she was greedy for Musian's body. In the final analysis, Lin Ling and Musian practiced dual cultivation at the beginning because Musian coaxed and deceived him into doing it, and the ultimate goal was to suppress the fire. Although just as Musian expected, if they practiced dual cultivation a few times, the relationship has soured. But Miss Ling Long naturally couldn't say anything about coveting Musian's health. Seeing that the atmosphere seemed to be getting more and more dangerous, thoughts in Musian's mind flashed rapidly. What should I do? If I go towards Miss Ling Long now, Yao Meng will definitely be angry, but if I let it go, if she doesn't care, Linger will probably be bullied until she cries. Among the big sharks in the fish pond, Fairy Yao Meng, who is not easy to fight, has the highest combat power. While Musian was still thinking about these things in his mind, Lin Ling suddenly raised the small notebook, and the words on it appeared in his field of vision. "Miss Bai became a Taoist partner with him earlier than you." Yao Meng looked calm and said with a slight smile, "What if we become a Taoist couple?" There was a hint of charm in her blue, gem-like eyes. She just caressed Musian's face, and her voice, which was like the sound of nature, contained a hint of playfulness. "You can have many Taoist companions, but you only have one wife. The only wife beside him is me." A few words of understatement immediately brought the pressure back to Lin Ling in an instant. Yao Meng was indeed right. She was the only Taoist companion of Musian. Now she was naturally qualified to say this. In the absence of Bairu Oxi, she was the only official. "Is it okay even if the palace master hears it?" Lin Ling suddenly asked. Almost the moment she opened her mouth, there seemed to be a mysterious force shrouding the area. Yao Meng just raised his head and glanced at it inadvertently, and immediately noticed something, and whispered, "Spelling spirit technique. What they say now will be heard by Gong Lianyu, who is preparing to attack the Feathering Realm in the Sword Palace." But So what? What's the harm in hearing it? The fact that I am married to him is a matter known to all the 9 states. Even Bairuoxi has nothing to say here. That elegant and calm voice rippled like ripples. Gong Lianyu, who was far away in the depths of the Sword Palace, opened her eyes almost instantly. When she heard the voice lingering in her ears, she was slightly startled at first, and then she clenched her silver teeth. "You Qing Emperor, you are taking advantage of this palace's retreat to fight for immortality and spread the word that you and Mu Lang are husband and wife? Even went to the front door of this palace to show off? King Di's current behavior is like taking away a woman's boyfriend in front of her. He even shouted about her husband as if no one else was watching. When she was not with Musian, Qing Emperor had already called her husband like this. How many more outrageous things could Qing Emperor do in private? Just by closing her eyes and imagining for a moment, Gong Lianyu felt like there was burning anger in her chest. Calm down, don't mess up your mind because of this. Bairuoxi's soft voice came from the bottom of her heart. Gong Lianyu calmed down a little now, and sat on the lotus pond, gritting her silver teeth angrily. Then we can't let Emperor Qing do whatever she wants. I want to see what she wants to do. She took out the ancient bronze sword from between her plump and straight chest and gently threw it out. The ancient bronze sword turned into countless sword shadows in the next moment, as if weaving out all the scenery in the world. The ancient bronze sword split the space, and from the crack in the space, the scene at Musian's place came into Gong Lianyu's field of vision. The Sword Palace finally calmed down their anger, and Yao Meng, who was far away among the Blue Clan, now had a happy smile on his face. I should thank you. If it weren't for you, I might not be able to convey what I want to say to Gong Lianyu. This kind of pleasure of being cuckolded in front of her, made her body burst out with colorful fairy mist, and she felt happy all over. Lin Ling was surprised. Jpg. Her young heart was shocked and she was speechless for a long time. The innocent Miss Linglong didn't expect that the Green Emperor could ridicule her like this in front of her Taoist partner. If Gong Lianyu was not still far away in the Sword Palace to impact the Yuhua realm, she would probably have killed the Blue Clan with the sword in her hand. The advantage that had just been established was gone in an instant. Lin Ling's eyes fell on Musian. She bit her lips lightly, tears in her eyes, and looked aggrieved. Yao Meng really couldn't help Musian this time, but she was Musian's wife, and this alone was already a big win. Even though he had long been accustomed to Yao Meng's operation, Musian couldn't help rubbing his forehead and sighing softly, Yao Meng, it's almost done. Yao Meng showed a faint smile on her face, and glanced at her with her beautiful eyes. Are you heartbroken? But not to mention Musian, even she herself felt a little bit sorry for Lin Ling's attitude. Although she didn't seem to have thought about how much Lin Ling and Musian had done during her absence from Dongzhou. Musian silently held his forehead and sighed. Yao Meng was happy to cheat on someone, but it would be troublesome for him to clean up afterwards. Dong dong. In this terrifying atmosphere full of murderous intentions and undercurrents, there was a knock on the door outside the house. There is someone, I am saved. Musian was delighted. He decisively got up from the bed and opened the door. I'll go open the door. Standing at the door was a beautiful lady in a yellow dress. Wei Mengru wouldn't take the initiative to look for Musian. Her appearance was very unexpected, even Musian himself didn't expect it. Sister Mengru, why are you here? Musian showed a kind smile. No matter what, it's good that someone came in to interrupt this dangerous atmosphere. If Wei Mengru arrived a little later, the next time she saw Musian might be in the small dark room of Yaokai. Wei Mengru didn't say anything, and her eyes swept around the room. The first person she saw was Yao Meng, who was sitting on the bed with one leg and a cold temperament. She was smiling at the moment, looking at Wei Mengru standing at the door. Seeing Lin Ling's appearance again, even if she hadn't seen what happened before, Wei Mengru had a rough guess in her heart. After looking around, she said, something happened in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. The ancestral worship meeting is an event held every few years by the major ancient families in Dongzhou. It's just that the Lan clan's ancestral worship meeting has always been famous. The biggest reason is that the Lan clan has produced a great man in the Hedeo realm. The oracle given by the ancestors of the Lan clan has always been respected by the major ancient families, but no one would have thought that the oracle in the Lan clan's ancestral land was not given by the Lan clan's ancestors. Muzian thought that the matter of the nine-tailed sky fox would be exposed sooner or later, but he didn't expect it to be so early, so that he was not ready. When Muzian came to the ancestral land with Wei Mengru, at this moment, a group of Lan clan members had gathered here. Yao Meng did not follow. After all, this matter involved the internal affairs of the Lan clan, and she didn't want to get involved. "Senior sister, what happened here?" Muzian saw Lan Murian in the crowd and immediately asked in a voice transmission. "It seems that there is something wrong in the ancestral land. The ancestral worship meeting after this may not be able to proceed as usual." Lan Murian told the details, but she didn't know the specific situation. Muzian's eyes were a bit thoughtful. It seems that the nine-tailed sky fox's consciousness is awakening. Although he is standing here, he can vaguely sense the breath of the nine-tailed sky fox coming from the Lan family's ancestral land. If so, this ancestral worship meeting may not be able to proceed as usual. At this time, Lan Murian suddenly sent a voice message. "What you wanted to tell us before, could it be related to the changes in the ancestral land?" She is a very wise woman, and naturally can hear the meaning of Muzian's words that night. Muzian nodded first, then thought about it, and sent a voice message. "Is senior sister not angry now?" Lan Murian sneered and said, "Junior brother thinks too highly of himself, who would be angry because of your affairs?" Muzian said that if you add a sentence after senior sister, "Don't misunderstand without authorization, I will be angry, but not because of you, stupid, stupid. That's pure tsundere." He raised his head and looked at the ancestral land not far ahead. Although there was no movement in the ancestral land, he could still vaguely sense a strong demonic aura. This demonic aura was not obvious. It was obviously covered up by the formation of the Blue Clan. After staring silently for an unknown period of time, there was a faint commotion in the distance. Muzian looked over and saw other ancient families in Dongzhou. The two ancient families of Qingyu Holy Land and Dongzhou actually came to the ancestral land together. Lan Pingzi, the patriarch of the Blue Clan, looked at the Qingyu Saint Lord in front of him, frowned slightly, and realized that the other party was not friendly. "I don't know why the Saint Lord of Qingyu Holy Land has time to come to my Blue Clan today. Is there something important?" The Qingyu Saint Lord is a woman dressed in luxurious clothes. Although she looks like she has passed her prime, she has a bit of a full and plump charm of a woman. There were 3 rounds of golden light behind her, and her aura was quite extraordinary. At this moment, she smiled. "What? Fellow Daoist Lan, don't you welcome me?" Another patriarch of the ancient family said with a smile, "We just want to watch the Lan clan's ancestral worship ceremony. We come uninvited, please forgive us." After he finished speaking, he sighed and looked up at the ancestral land not far ahead. "I just didn't expect that something happened in the ancestral land of the Lan clan today. I'm afraid the ancestral worship ceremony cannot be held as usual." Lan Pingzi put his hands behind his back and smiled lightly. "Don't worry about this matter. The ancestral worship ceremony will be held as usual. When the time comes, all Daoists will just watch." "Oh." The Qingyu Saint showed a faint smile on his face, with a watery light in his eyes, and said, "It seems that fellow Daoist Lan is confident that he can continue to suppress that thing in the sculpture of the Lan family's ancestor." Boom. A simple sentence, but it was like a stone that caused 1,000 waves, and it resounded in the hearts of several high-level members of the Lan clan. Lan Pingzi's face changed slightly, and he said in a deep voice, "Dai can speak directly if you have something to say. There is no need to be so secretive." You have brought so many people to my land clan with great fanfare. If you want to visit the ancestral worship ceremony, it's fine. If you want to ride on the head of my land clan, I'm afraid you have found the wrong person. There was a slight commotion near the ancestral land. Some people realized that the land clan seemed to be hiding some big secret, otherwise the Kingu Holy Land would not be so ostentatious today. Fellow deist, you are joking. The Blue Clan has always been the top force besides the three giants of Dongzhou. Although the area they occupy is the richest in Chinese medicinal materials and spiritual mines, that is what the Blue Clan deserves. How could we have the intention of provoking them? An elder from the ancient family who came with the Kingu Holy Land said with a smile, "It's just that I am proficient in astronomical phenomena. Today, I accidentally noticed that there was something ominous in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan, so I invited the Kingu Holy Lord to accompany me to help the Blue Clan. I don't know what the Lin family found in the ancestral land of my Blue Clan, and why they have to invite so many people to come together with such fanfare," Lan Pingzi said calmly with his hands behind his back. The elder of the Lin family said with a smile, "Demon spirit." As soon as these words came out, there was a commotion and whispering outside the ancestral land almost at that moment. Lan Pingzi's fist hidden in his sleeve could not help but clench quietly. For a moment, a strong killing intent burst out of his eyes. But it was fleeting. Lan Pingzi said calmly, "Elder Lin, you are joking. The ancestral land is the most sacred place of our Lan clan. No monster dares to invade it. Maybe the celestial phenomena are wrong." The second elder of the Lin family has studied celestial phenomena for thousands of years. "I think this judgment is not wrong. I think he must have his reasons." The Kingu saint smiled gently and said immediately, "Why not let him use magic to analyze the ancestral land, so as to clear the name of the Lan clan?" "Does the Kingu saint intend to make an enemy of our Lan clan?" the elder of the Lan clan scolded, but there was a strange light flashing in his turbid eyes. The Holy Lord Kingu shook his head and smiled, "Fellow deist, you are too kind." She paused. "It's just that Dongzhou had a clear rule that anyone who secretly colluded with demons would be considered a traitor. Let's not talk about the distant past. The attitude of Lianji sect has always been like this. Even the forbidden area was once exposed because of the demon clan incident, and the internal affairs of Dongzhou were cleared. If the news that there are demon cultivators hidden in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan spreads to the outside world, regardless of whether the news is accurate, for the Blue Clan, it is probably not a good thing, right? This statement is equivalent to occupying the high ground of public opinion. It is fine for the Blue Clan to accept the inspection. If it refuses, there will be more and more voices questioning the Blue Clan's secret hiding of demon cultivators in the ancestral land, which is a false alarm. But once demon cultivators are really found in the ancestral land, especially extremely powerful demon cultivators, in the future, Dongzhou will have no place for the Blue Clan. By then, the spiritual mines and natural treasures in the Blue Clan's territory will be divided up by the forces that took action today. But if demon cultivators cannot be found in the ancestral land, then the three major forces today will be retaliated by the Blue Clan. However, such a high reward is enough for them to take this risk. Besides, this is not a risk. It is obvious that the three major forces such as Kingu Holy Land are clearly well prepared. Lan Pingzi showed anger on his face and said in a deep voice, "Are you questioning the innocence of my Lan clan? Sorry, but this is all for Dongzhou. I think even if people outside know about it later, they will understand us." Kingu Holy Lord smiled and said, "I wonder what deist Lan has considered? Can we let the elders of the Lin family observe it?" For a while, several high-level members of the Lan clan were silent. Lan Pingzi's eyes were full of coldness. "No. Deist Ian's words may make many people think that the Lan clan really hid demon cultivators in the ancestral land, so they are so desperate to refuse the search," someone on the side said sinisterly. As soon as the voice fell, a blood flower suddenly burst out from the man's chest, his eyes widened, and his spiritual consciousness was wiped out. For a moment, the commotion in the venue was quiet for a while. Lan Wu wiped the blood from his palm and said calmly, "Several seniors questioned that my Lan clan secretly hid the demon cultivator. If the demon cultivator was not found later, I think we have paid the corresponding price, right?" Brother-in-law is so handsome, Musian, who has been watching the scene in the crowd, couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He had a good impression of Lan Wu. Among all the geniuses, Lan Wu had a good temper and character. Although he was arrogant like a genius, he was not jealous. Then, Musian glanced inadvertently in the direction of the ancestral land of the Lan clan. In front of the ancestral land, there were ripples of space at this moment, and from the ripples, it seemed that a strand of silver hair could be seen blowing in the wind. Musian's sight fell on the Lan sisters in the crowd again. He suddenly sent a voice, "Senior sister, Sister Fei Ying, do you hope that there are demon cultivators in the ancestral land, or not?" Lan Mulian was stunned almost the moment she heard this, and a trace of doubt flashed in her beautiful eyes as clear as a cold pond. She was not stupid, and naturally heard the meaning of Musian's words. Musian handed the life and death of the entire Lan clan to the hands of their sisters, and it was up to them to decide. Lan Feiying and her sister looked at each other, and immediately sent a voice to Musian, "You really know something, are there demon cultivators here?" Musian smiled, "It doesn't matter whether there are demon cultivators or not, what matters is whether you hope there are demon cultivators here." The two sisters fell silent. To be fair, even now they have no feelings towards the Lan family, but if they say that the Lan family has declined to this point by taking advantage of the demon cultivator incident, thinking about it carefully, it is not what they think. The attitude of the Lan family today is inevitably suspicious. It seems that it would be better to ask the people of Lianji sect to preside over justice. At this time, an abrupt voice also drew the attention of the two sisters of the Lan family back to the present. Not far away, several major forces seemed to be arguing endlessly. The Lan family was determined not to give in, and the King of Holy Land did not want to miss this great opportunity and wanted to search out the demonic energy in the ancestral land of the Lan family in one fell swoop. If this opportunity is missed, it will be almost impossible to overthrow the Lan family later. Those people, please leave slowly. Why not wait until the people of Lianji sect arrive in my Lan family? Lan Pingzi answered calmly with an indifferent look. The King of Holy Lord and others frowned inadvertently. The Blue clan refused to give in to their persuasion, which made them more convinced that there was something unclean hidden in the Blue clan's ancestral land. But if they really waited until the Lianji sect came to administer justice, the Blue clan would have probably already found a way to cover up the unclean thing in the ancestral land. By then, things would be in trouble. The second elder of the Lin family looked cold, raised his hands and made a gesture, and the spiritual energy in his body was drawn out. Hundreds of flowers bloomed out of thin air on the ground, and those flowers continued to extend into the Blue clan's ancestral land. With a bang, a vibration came from the ancestral land. Lan Pingzi's eyes turned cold, and he said angrily, "Daiyu, are you planning to declare war on my Blue clan?" In his body, the spiritual energy of half a step of enlightenment had quietly overflowed, gradually covering this ancestral land, making many people present feel more and more heavy in their hearts. However, at this time, the second elder of the Lin family stared at the direction of the ancestral land, and then he suddenly laughed out loud. "It's a demon cultivator. There are unclean things in the Blue clan's ancestral land, hiding demon cultivators." These words were like a heavy hammer, hitting the hearts of all the Blue clan members and even the Blue clan's high-level officials, and countless people looked up. In the depths of the ancestral land that had just been attacked, at this moment, a vast pink spiritual energy was slowly rising. Demon spirit. The demon spirit was like a whirlpool, hovering above the Blue clan's ancestral land, revealing a strange and extremely charming aura. Just the first glance, it made people dizzy. Lan Pingzi and other Blue Clan elders felt depressed. They didn't expect that the biggest secret of the Blue Clan would be leaked to others. Lan Murian and Lan Feiying almost subconsciously looked at Musian, and the slender hands hidden under their skirts subconsciously grasped the corners of their skirts. If Musian didn't lie, then the fate of the Blue Clan might be in their hands, and even a word might affect the fate of the entire Blue Clan. Sister. Lan Feiying's eyes fell on her noble and cold sister. At this time, she did not feel any pleasure of revenge in her heart, but felt very complicated for a while. Lan Murian frowned, listening to the noisy discussions in her ears, and her eyes fell on the gloomy Lan Pingzi not far away. Then, she subconsciously looked at the boy again. His eyes were gentle and he was looking at her calmly. After being silent for an unknown period of time, Lan Murian's cold and quiet voice sounded in Musian's heart, "The matter between the Lan clan and us is a family matter. No matter what, it is not the turn of outsiders to intervene." "I knew you would choose this," Musian grinned. "Senior sister is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She will eventually choose to help the Lan clan. It is within his expectation." Lan Murian didn't seem to like Musian's look of having everything under control. She frowned slightly and transmitted the message, "Are there any demon cultivators in the ancestral land of the Lan clan?" "Yes." Musian gave her a positive answer and stared into her eyes, "And they are demon cultivators of the Hedeo realm." Lan Murian looked up at Musian in disbelief. "Do you remember what the beautiful ancestor of the Lan family said before?" Musian paused and continued to transmit the message. "The oracle that appeared after the ancestor worship ceremony was not done by the ancestors of the Lan family. Then who is sending down the oracle to maintain the prosperity of the Lan clan?" Lan Murian reacted almost immediately and stared at Musian. "Hedeo demon cultivator. The backup plan that the nine-tailed sky fox secretly prepared in Dongzhou before his death was the Lan clan. What is hidden in the sculpture of the ancestral land is not the spiritual consciousness of the ancestors of the Lan family, but the spiritual consciousness of the nine-tailed sky fox. The Lan clan may have known about this a long time ago, but they have not expelled the spiritual consciousness of the nine-tailed sky fox in order to maintain the prosperity of the Lan clan. No matter how strong the Lan clan is, once the matter of the combined demon cultivator is exposed, they will no longer have a foothold in Dongzhou," Musian said softly. The pink glow of demonic energy was reflected in Lan Murian's eyes. She stared at Musian. "Since the demon cultivator is really in the ancestral land, what is the point of asking Feiying and me this question now?" She didn't believe that Musian could steal the sky and transfer the spiritual consciousness of the nine-tailed sky fox in front of so many people. Musian suddenly laughed and said, "In this world, not only the demon cultivators in the demon world have demonic energy, but as long as they are demons, they have demonic energy." Boom. The next moment, in the ancestral land of the Lan clan, the extremely rich demonic energy rushed into the sky, and in the rolling clouds and mist, scattered fragments of pink light, enchanting and charming. The Saint Lord Qingyu and the others looked at each other, and there was a hint of ecstasy in their eyes. Sure enough, it was right, the bet was right. There are indeed demon cultivators hidden in the ancestral land of the Lan clan. Lan Pingzi and the others were extremely pale, and several elders were even more murderous. No matter what, as long as the secret is leaked, they will have no way to survive. In this case, it is better to fight and keep all these people. There is still a glimmer of hope. Such a strong murderous intention. Do you want to kill people to silence them? The elder of the God clan in black robes has a feminine temperament and cold eyes, but we have expected that what is left here is just a clone. Even if it dies, it will only hurt the origin. It will not be a problem if it is repaired for thousands of years." The Saint Lord Qingyu smiled and said with a smile, "I wonder if fellow Daoist Lan has anything else to say." Lan Pingzi's face was gloomy, and the faces of the elders behind him were also gloomy. The second elder of the Lin clan raised his head and looked at the monstrous demonic energy in the air, and sneered, It is a foregone conclusion that the Blue Clan has colluded with the demon cultivators, but the final verdict should be left to the Lianji sect to judge. Lan Pingzi's murderous intent seemed to overflow, and just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a sweet singing voice above the ancestral land that was as charming as a siren in the sea. A. The singing voice made many people present change their faces, and even the Kingu Saint Lord, who had just been confident, was also a little surprised and doubtful. According to the information she received, the demon cultivator's spiritual consciousness in the Blue Clan should have been extremely weak, so why would it emit such a surging spiritual energy at this moment? Don't worry, there are only 2 Hideo demon cultivators in this world, and now they are both in the demon world. I think this thing is just the remnant soul of an ancient demon cultivator. The elder of the god clan beside him smiled and said, "Let me see if this demon cultivator is playing tricks or something. Maybe this is just its last moment of life." After saying that, a third eye lit up between his eyebrows, examining the demon cultivator in mid-air. Lan Murian and Lan Feiying subconsciously looked at Musian. Both sisters were a little doubtful in their hearts, and were about to ask Musian what he had done. But before they opened their mouths, they heard the elder of the god clan scream in surprise. He was extremely pale, and he stepped back repeatedly, covering his eyes, and muttered in astonishment, "Spirit dragon? How could it be, how could it be a spirit dragon?" Boom! The faces of the people including the Saint Lord Kingu changed. Lan Pingzi and the others seemed to see the dawn of hope. They all looked up and saw the vaguely visible figure in a white skirt floating above the ancestral land. Spirit dragon! The elders of the Lan clan looked at each other in surprise. After a brief moment of surprise, Lan Pingzi seemed to realize something and subconsciously looked at Musian in the crowd. "My dear friend Mu, I don't need to thank you for your kindness." Then, Lan Pingzi's voice transmission appeared in Musian's ears. Even without thinking, he could guess that this must be done by Musian. After all, he was married to the Qing Emperor, so it was not surprising that he met the spirit dragon. "No need to go through so much trouble, just marry your 2 daughters to me and everything will be fine," Musian replied calmly. "No need, we are all family, uncle, don't be so polite." The haze in Lan Pingzi's heart was swept away, and he looked up at the Kingu Saint and others, sneering, "Have you had enough of the trouble? Today, there was such a big commotion, and it also disturbed Senior Linglong's cultivation, who is going to defect from Dongzhou. No matter what, just put a big hat on it first." How could it be? The Kingu Saint still had an unbelievable look on his face. No. That demonic aura contains a charming meaning, how could it be a spirit dragon? After this, the elders who were a little confused after seeing the spirit dragon all reacted. Although we have never seen Senior Linglong, it is impossible for her to have a charming aura. The demonic aura just now clearly revealed a demonic aura that can bewitch people. The elders of the ancient families who followed the Kingu Holy Land to give the Blue Clan a fatal blow spoke up and questioned the Blue Clan. "That was left when I accidentally practiced the skills in the ancestral land of the Blue Clan in the past. I didn't expect it to cause misunderstandings. I'm really sorry." However, at this moment, an abrupt voice sounded, and many people present looked over. The Holy Lord Kingu frowned and glanced at the young cultivator who spoke rashly with displeasure. Then, her eyes froze for a moment, and she blurted out, "Musian." Musian is also in the Blue Clan. The faces of many people from the ancient families present changed slightly, and they looked over one after another, their eyes full of surprise. Some young female cultivators who followed the elders of the clan had bright eyes and looked at him curiously. Musian explained the reason for the charming demonic aura, and this reason for accountability was also blocked. The faces of the Holy Lord Kingu and others were not very good. Seeing this, Musian smiled and raised his hands to clasp his fists to the people present, and then left the ancestral area gracefully. The Blue Clan will solve the rest of the things themselves, and he doesn't like being stared at like this. Are you happy now? When he left the ancestral land, time suddenly stopped. Yao Meng appeared behind him without knowing when. Her long black hair was lazily scattered, and the fairy mist covered her graceful figure. She looked at him playfully. I am naturally happy to be able to help my senior sisters, but won't Sister Kingdee blame me for protecting the Blue Clan like this? Musian sighed. It's not that Dongzhou and the demon world have no dealings. After all, the hatred between the demon world and Dongzhou in the past was caused by the first generation of demon emperors. Since the reign of the demon queen, the relationship between the two sides has eased a lot. Even mutual cooperation in the future is not impossible. Musian nodded silently. I think this is also the wish of the demon queen. Yao Meng suddenly laughed softly. Wish? If I marry you to the demon world, I think I can fulfill the wish of the demon queen. Master Zixuan's heart is not known to passers-by, but at least it is tacitly understood among several great masters in the Hedao realm. If Musian is really sent to the demon world, Shi Zixuan will probably promote trade with Dongzhou at all costs. Musian couldn't help showing a look of surprise when he heard it. Sister Kingdee, why did you suddenly say such absurd words? Yao Meng was stunned for a moment. What? Musian looked solemn, holding Yao Meng's slender hand, and said, I don't know what you think, but in my heart, no matter when and where, I want to be with you. You are my most respected elder and my lover, these will never change. Yao Meng's heart trembled slightly, and her calm state of mind was actually rippled. Her eyebrows softened a little. Although I know it's just words to make people happy, it still makes people happy. She held Musian's hand tightly, and then, as if she noticed something, she inadvertently glanced at the rippling space not far away. As if she had sensed something through that space, the corners of her mouth slightly raised a faint arc, raised her fingertips, and a green lotus fell towards the space crack in the north direction. A sharp buzzing sound came from the entire Sword Palace. Deep in the Sword Palace, Gong Lianyu suddenly opened her eyes, with anger in her eyes. Kingdee, you dare! He is my Taoist partner. What is there to be afraid of? Yao Meng's calm and gentle voice sounded in the Sword Palace. Isn't your Taoist partner my husband? Do you want to guess, during the time you are in seclusion to impact the Yahua realm, what fun things will I do with him? Gong Lianyu's heart sank, and anger rose in her chest. Whenever she thought of what Kingdee might do to her Taoist partner during her seclusion, her heart couldn't help but twist, and a strong jealousy burned. Especially Kingdee, that bitch, actually attacked her face. Why didn't she do anything to Musian when he was in seclusion to Yahua? At this moment, Gong Lianyu's heart was filled with regret. At that time, Gong Lianyu was still relatively reserved, and Bai Ruoxi had always been in control of her body. Buzz. With the sound of a sword, the space crack in the Sword Palace was completely sealed by the pure world green lotus. However, the next moment, Gong Lianyu stood up from the lotus pond. The petals of the pure world green lotus were cut into pieces and fell, shining with a little green light, making Gong Lianyu's hair look a little green. She was successfully angered by the actions of the Minotaur in front of the Green Emperor. Bai Ruoxi, who was in the heart world, seemed to have noticed something, and immediately raised his head and asked, Are you not going to retreat? Retreat. Gong Lianyu's dark patterned palace skirt seemed to light up with a red gold flame, and the sword light behind her was shining. Then, a sneer sounded in the Sword Palace. Before retreating, I will tear that bitch's mouth apart first. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 456. There was a slight commotion in the Blue Clan's ancestral land. The two ancient families and even the Qingyu Holy Land that had just suddenly attacked the Blue Clan were all a little confused at this moment. After all, the information they received would definitely not be a problem. But so what? Now that the spirit dragon has appeared in the ancestral land, even if the Blue Clan really has a demon cultivator, can they still question the identity of the spirit dragon? In this huge east continent, I'm afraid no one dares to do so. After all, she is a spirit dragon, a creature loved by heaven, and it is not an exaggeration to say that she is a creature born by the Tao. The Tao is above all things in the universe. It can be said to be the origin of the universe, because it is because of it that the universe exists. In the entire Zhu, the only one who resonates with the Tao is the spirit dragon. After all, it is not that the spirit dragon resonates with the Tao, but that she was born with the Tao rhyme of the Tao, and soon after she realized the Tao, she merged with the Tao on her own. With the appearance of the spirit dragon, this farce in the Blue Clan's ancestral land finally came to an end. Lan Pingzi and others, who were in a passive state just now, are now ready to settle accounts with these ill-intentioned enemies. The great elder of the Lan clan looked at this scene, his old brows inadvertently frowned, and turned around to leave secretly. Not far away, Lan Feiying looked at Musian, who had already left, and quickly tugged at the corner of her sister's clothes, and said in a voice transmission, "Sister, look, where does the great elder seem to be going?" Lan Murian glanced sideways, and in her field of vision, an old man in a grey robe was slowly walking towards the outside of the ancestral land, looking a little panicked. "Where is the great elder going?" Lan Murian spoke calmly, staring at the grey-robed old man not far away with her bright eyes. The great elder of the Lan clan ignored it, but quickened his pace and planned to leave. The biggest secret of the Lan clan was leaked for no reason. Even a fool could guess that there must be an insider who leaked the information. If he stayed in such a place, he would be found out sooner or later. Lan Pingzi looked sideways and said quietly, "Where is the elder going?" "The Blue Clan believes that they treat you well, so why did they let you do such a traitorous thing?" When Lan Pingzi said this, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 waves. For a time, the entire Blue Clan was shocked and looked at the elder, who was in a high position in the Blue Clan, in disbelief. The legal wife not far behind Lan Pingzi was also stunned and stared at her grandfather. "What did you say just now? Was this done by the elder?" The elder of the Blue Clan beside him looked at Lan Pingzi in disbelief and said, "At first I didn't believe it, but from his various actions before, and even from his efforts to get Mu Lian and Fei Ying to join the Blue Clan later, I had some doubts," Lan Pingzi said indifferently. "Lan Cao, the Blue Clan believes that they treat you well, so why do you do this?" The first generation elder looked up, with a trace of sadness in his old eyes. It was obvious that someone had leaked the news today, so it reached the ears of other outsiders. Otherwise, King Yu Holy Land would not have led the other two ancient families to denounce the Blue Clan. But he did not expect that the person who leaked the secret of the Blue Clan was actually the chief elder of the Blue Clan, Lan Cao. You know, the status of the chief elder of the Blue Clan is second only to one person in the Blue Clan, and the power of the chief elder is also the largest in the Blue Clan. If the chief elder had not been childless, Lan Pingzi would not have been able to take the position of the chief. However, what was unexpected was that after a brief panic, Lan Cao quickly showed a sinister smile on his dry face, and sneered, "Do you treat me well?" His eyes fell on Lan Pingzi, and he sneered, "If you really treat me well, you wouldn't have secretly used those despicable means in the pills your wife took to prevent her from getting pregnant because you were afraid of me and the forces behind me." Lan Pingzi's pupils shrank slightly, and he was full of surprise in his heart, but his face was expressionless. "If you hadn't secretly acted back then, the one who inherited the position of the young master of the Lan clan would not be Lan Wu, but my grandson." Lan Cao slowly spoke, revealing an unknown secret. "If you hadn't had the intention of rebellion, why would I be here?" Lan Pingzi had no expression on his face. This matter needs to be traced back to the time when Lan Pingzi inherited the position of the clan leader. Obviously, there was another reason why Lan Pingzi inherited the position of the clan leader. Lan Pingzi also knew about some of the movements of the Great Elder in secret, so he tried his best to prevent his wife from getting pregnant. Because the power of the Lan Cao lineage was too huge in the past. Once Lan Cao's granddaughter got pregnant and gave birth to a child, there would be a day of forcing the palace sooner or later. At that time, Lan Pingzi was only in the Return to Void realm, and he was weak and alone. Once Lan Cao was allowed to take charge of the Blue Clan, Lan Cao, who had long had a different mind, would probably do something harmful to the Blue Clan sooner or later. Lan Cao did not refute, but showed a grim smile. So, you want to stop me from leaving? The Great Elder of the Blue Clan should be half a step into enlightenment now, and these words naturally aroused the anger of several elders of the Blue Clan. What he meant by this was that he was confident that he could defeat everyone present together. A vast spiritual energy burst out from Lan Pingzi's body, and he slapped in the direction of Lan Cao. The sound waves swept across, causing many cultivators to change their faces slightly. Although they knew that the Lan clan leader was powerful, they did not expect that Lan Pingzi's spiritual energy was close to enlightenment. After the rules of heaven and earth were rewritten, Lan Pingzi might be the first cultivator to enter the realm of enlightenment. Just when countless people thought that Lan Cao might suffer a great loss, they saw Lan Cao also slap out with his palm. Under his feet, black viscous liquid emerged, swallowing up the giant palm slapped out by Lan Pingzi. Is this the confidence you have to attack me? Do you really think that the enlightenment realm can be invincible in Dongzhou? Lan Cao put his hands behind his back, and a gleam of brilliance flashed in his turbid eyes. He raised his hand again and stretched out a palm, turning into a black seal. The bright light filled the seal and fell towards Lan Pingzi. Lan Pingzi's pupils contracted, and he raised his hand again and slapped out a palm. The two magical treasures collided with each other, causing the mountains to shake together and countless cracks to appear on the ground. Puff! Lan Pingzi spurted out a mouthful of blood, and the whole person stepped back several steps, covering his chest, and blood overflowed from the corners of his mouth. He suddenly raised his head, staring at the elder of the Blue Clan in disbelief, and said in shock, "The Hedao realm. No, there is something in your body that is not bound by the rules of heaven and earth." Lan Cao smiled and said, "The clan leader has good eyesight. Some time ago, the clone projected by the Sabbath god's envoy gave me something. You are all bound by the rules of heaven and earth, but I can voluntarily use the spiritual energy that does not belong to heaven and earth." Lan Cao revealed the unknown secret. The Sabbath that once swept across the entire Zhou is about to come. A god's envoy came a few days ago, and he is one of the servants of that god's envoy. The Sabbath is the heavenly punishment that will settle accounts with cultivators above the Return to Void. Zhou has had more than 3 Sabbaths, and each time the major forces in Zhou were reshuffled. Except for the 3 giants of Dongzhou, all the cultivators present changed color when they heard the word Sabbath. Just the thing that the envoy of God granted made the chief elder of the Blue Clan defeat Lan Pingzi so easily. Seeing this scene, everyone was extremely shocked. "Does anyone want to keep me?" Lan Cao looked around at the several elders of the Blue Clan who were also stern and smiled coldly. At the beginning, Lan Cao's power was the greatest power of the Blue Clan. As a result, over the years, Lan Pingzi seemed to have seen that Lan Cao had long had a different heart and had been on guard, reducing Lan Cao's power several times. However, these things are no longer important now. After all, when the Sabbath god's spaceship lands in Zhou, the Blue Clan, no, most of the holy places and ancient families in Dongzhou will probably have to reshuffle. At that time, he can create a force stronger than the Blue Clan. All the elders were extremely angry, but they were helpless at the moment. In front of a cultivator whose strength is suspected to be quasi-enlightenment, any means will appear weak and powerless. Looking at the indignant expressions of the elders of the Blue Clan, Lan Cao's smile became more and more intense, laughing at those who tried to stop him and overestimated their own abilities. In a few days, I will go to the Blue Clan in person to settle the grievances of these years. You just wait and see. After saying that, he left with a wave of his sleeves. However, at this moment, Lan Cao suddenly felt that there were countless strange eyes behind him, looking at him incredulously. To be precise, they were looking behind him. Lan Cao's heart suddenly shuddered, and he vaguely felt a piercing chill coming from behind him. He turned his head sharply and looked. I don't know when it started, but a vague figure appeared in front of her. She seemed to walk from heaven to the human world. She was beautiful, but her awe-inspiring temperament was even more amazing. The night wind blew through her hair, blowing the black and white interwoven dress, as if a banished immortal had descended to the world. Like a woman in the nine heavens, she walked towards the human world step by step. Such a gorgeous beauty, never seen before, such thoughts flashed through the minds of countless cultivators present. Who are you? Lan Cao asked. He sensed the murderous intent of this person, and the dry palm hidden in the sleeve quietly clenched into a fist, and suddenly raised his hand, with runes flashing on his palm, intending to take the initiative. Buzz. What followed was a sword sound, and he suddenly felt that the figure of the woman in front of him suddenly became trance. The next moment, Lan Cao's lips moved, and he turned his head in horror to look behind him. At some point, a pentagram rune appeared behind him. Gong Lianyu put the bronze ancient sword back into the scabbard on his chest. Boom! A roar fell, and a deafening sound came from the entire ancestral land, and the vast spiritual energy spread rapidly like ripples. The Sabbath God's messenger hasn't arrived yet, but you've already started recruiting subordinates. The voice of the woman in a black and white palace dress with plum blossoms printed on it sounded coldly and calmly, which made many people present feel awed. The faces of all the monks changed, and they looked at the woman in the palace dress in surprise. You know, Lan Pingzi was defeated by the elder of the Blue Clan just now, but now he was killed by this mysterious woman with a sword. Hedeo Realm. No mistake, Hedeo Realm. Holding an ancient bronze sword, she is the master of the Sword Palace. I didn't expect that two Hedeo Realm people came to the ancestral land of the Blue Clan. Lan Pingzi and several elders of the Blue Clan looked at each other, and they couldn't help but be shocked. All of them couldn't believe it. If it was normal, letting Lan Cao leave today would probably bring huge troubles to the Blue Clan in the future. But who would have thought that one of the people chosen by the Sabbath God's messenger would be killed so easily? Lan Pingzi reacted quickly, took 2 steps forward, raised his hands and bowed, and said respectfully, I didn't know that the palace master would come today. I hope the palace master will forgive me. You should still have a lot of things to deal with in your ancestral land. Don't pay attention to me and just deal with it yourself. Gong Lianyu said calmly. This. Several elders looked at each other, a little stunned. However, they reacted quickly, and their unkind eyes fell on the elders of the ancient families present. At the same time, Lin Ling, who was watching a show far above his ancestral land, covered his mouth and yawned lazily, blinking his clear red eyes, tears welling up in his eyes, feeling a little bored. Musian hasn't let her leave her ancestral land yet, so she has to wait here for news from him. At this time, Lin Ling seemed to notice something, and his eyes fell suspiciously in a certain direction outside the ancestral land. She could sense that the charm of Gong Lianyu's sword was spreading outside the ancestral land. Beyond the ancestral land are countless high mountains. Gong Lianyu stepped on the void, looked down at the entire ancestral land, and said coldly, Qing Emperor, get out of here. As the words fell, a blue lotus bloomed silently for dozens of miles, and then, countless green lotuses bloomed slowly. The milky white halo shines in the blue lotus, which is sacred and charming. From the milky white halo, the fairy in a green skirt walked out holding Musian's hand, looking at Gong Lianyu with a smile, "Sister, if you don't go to retreat, how come you still have time to come to the Blue Clan to find me today? Where is the seed? Is there something important for my sister?" Behind her, 9 petals bloomed silently, exuding a heart-stopping aura under the sky. "It's nothing important." Gong Lianyu gritted her teeth, "It's just that before I go into seclusion, I want to tear your bitch's mouth apart first." This sound was not loud, but it made those monks who had left their ancestral land to explore what was going on outside feel their scalps numb, their hearts trembling, and their legs a little weak. The 2 Hedeo realm deities in Dongzhou are actually fighting among themselves. What happened to the palace master of the Sword Palace? How Duan is so angry? At this time, a sword energy fell from the sky in the ancestral land, which made the monks who were still joining in the fun suddenly tremble in their hearts and immediately pulled their descendants back to the ancestral land. "Grandpa, why don't we watch?" "Shut up, the palace master wants to see Emperor Qing for something, let's not disturb them," the elders in the clan scolded softly, signaling for the ignorant younger ones to be quiet. These juniors can know the heights of the world, but they can't. They have to protect their own people. The Sword Palace Master's sword was a warning to them. "Although I don't know what happened between her and King Di, I still don't want to get in trouble with her right now." The ancestral land was shrouded in golden sword energy, making it difficult to see the scene outside. But in fact, even without the sword energy, no one dared to peek at it at this time. After all, anyone with eyesight could see just now that Gong Lianyu was really angry. This was the most irritating time Gong Lianyu had ever been stimulated. Although she had long known that Fairy Yao Meng looked holy, but in fact she was black when cut open. But Gong Lianyu still didn't expect that this woman would actually come to the door and ridicule him. After cheating on others, you still want to kill someone? No one could bear this, let alone Gong Lianyu, who had an extremely cold and arrogant personality. Facing Gong Lianyu's cold eyes, Yao Meng looked extremely indifferent. She raised her beautiful eyebrows slightly, with a faint smile between her eyebrows. "The palace master is in love. Even if I did something unintentionally that made you so angry, you should wait until you become immortal and come to me again. I'm afraid your current state is just one step away from the catastrophe of becoming an immortal, right? I'm afraid that in a few days, when you have overcome the inner demons, the catastrophe will come." She could see Gong Lianyu's current state at a glance and spoke in a calm tone. Then, Yao Meng slightly raised her arrogant snow-white chin, with a hint of smile in her green eyes, and said through the voice, "Palace Master, please go to seclusion to overcome the inner demons with peace of mind. Your Taoist companion, I will definitely have a good life treat. You will definitely live up to it." Yao Meng's words were like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Gong Lianyu sneered again and again, "You sharp-tongued little bitch, I really think I am afraid of you. Do you want me to go back to seclusion in peace and let you and him cultivate together? Then you must take him away today." She stood in mid-air, her chest lit up with a faint soft light, and an ancient bronze sword was slowly pulled out from Gong Lianyu's chest. For a moment, thousands of sword blades lit up behind her, and the golden light seemed to overwhelm the dazzling sunlight. Whoosh! The next moment, Gong Lianyu took action. When she slashed out one by one, the runes of the sword were intertwined and turned into a simple ancient bronze sword to slash at Yao Meng, as if it could destroy the enemies of time. With such destructive power, it's no wonder that when there was talk of an attack in Kyushu, Gong Lianyu's combat power was the strongest. Yao Meng looked indifferent, and the green lotus behind her peeled off petals one by one, turning into countless shadows in front of her, turning slowly like a peacock. Boom! With a deafening sound, the pure world green lotus was quickly shattered by the ancient bronze sword, and then condensed again in an instant. No one in this world can do this, but Yao Meng can. The moment the weapon was shattered, it reorganized in her hand in less than half a second, and condensed. Countless green lotuses on the ground were continuously forming. Yao Meng provides spiritual energy. At this time, Gong Lianyu's eyes suddenly darkened. There are hundreds of flowers blooming on the ground. Those flowers quickly absorbed the vitality of the pure world green lotus and turned it into their own use. With one thought, the flowers bloom and rule the world. This is the Tao contained in the Yuanwen of the soldier character. It had not been long since Muzian gave her this rune, but it had already been completely mastered by Gong Lianyu. A look of surprise also flashed across Yao Meng's eyes, and the green lotus in front of her collapsed bit by bit. Yao Meng raised his hand and gently touched the tip of the ancient bronze sword with his slender fingers. This sword carried a terrifying will, and not even the pure world green lotus could block it. However, when it touched Yao Meng's fingertips, it rarely struggled, until finally, it completely stagnated in mid-air. Yao Meng raised his head with a faint smile. Is this enough to come to me? As soon as she finished speaking, her eyes suddenly focused on the young man next to Gong Lianyu. Muzian was taken away by Gong Lianyu at some point, at the moment of the fight. You didn't even notice that I had a ray of spiritual consciousness. Gong Lianyu raised her eyebrows and said with a sneer, you are only in the Ascension realm. Then, her eyes fell on Muzian, with a happy smile on her face and eyes, and said, but I don't plan to fight you anymore. Anyway, I will let Mu Lang stay in the Sword Palace from now on. From now on, you can watch me cultivate with him in the Sword Palace until he becomes me so far. Gong Lianyu, how dare you? Yao Meng's face showed panic, and his eyes were fixed on Gong Lianyu. Then, before the beauty in the palace dress showed a pleasant smile on her face, she raised the corners of her mouth slightly. Do you want to hear me reprimand you in such a panic? The cold wind blew by, and Mu Jian beside Gong Lianyu turned into a blue petal and blew away in the wind. Gong Lianyu was stunned for a moment, with a hint of astonishment in her eyes, and she suddenly raised her head. Is this something you forged? Yao Meng smiled and said nothing, but there was a strange look in his eyes. Gong Lianyu couldn't help but frown slightly. For some reason, she had a bad feeling in her heart. The principle of time, you rewrote the time on me. She suddenly reacted and stared at Yao Meng, almost furious. Her inner demon tribulation, which was supposed to start in a few days, actually arrived today in advance. Yao Meng said, Palace Master, just go about your tribulation with peace of mind. I will definitely take good care of your Taoist companion. Qing Emperor, if you dare to do anything outrageous to him while I am going through the tribulation, I will definitely go to Yaokai to find you in person after I go through the tribulation. Gong Lianyu finally panicked. She had no choice but to get through this inner demon tribulation. Plus the next meditation time, it could be 3 months at most or half a month at least. During this period of time, there is no telling what Qing Emperor will do. Yao Meng's red lips raised slightly. Are you threatening me? She paused and said casually, but it doesn't matter, you mocked me today, and I will feel your Taoist companion during your emergence. When your transformation is over, your Taoist companion will probably completely transform into me. Gong Lianyu's eyes contained anger, and the sound of the sword behind her resounded outside the ancestral land. She was so angry that she wanted to tear Yao Meng apart directly. But the calamity of inner demons has come, but she can only be helpless and furious. As soon as she takes action, heaven will immediately notice her movement and cause disaster. Qing Emperor, if I can't see his people after my retreat, just wait for my revenge. Gong Lianyu threatened fiercely. But this threat seemed so feeble at this moment. During her next period of seclusion, she naturally couldn't see what would happen to Muzian and Qingdi, but it was not difficult to imagine. But she could only watch the scene happen, unable to do anything. What responded to her was Yao Meng's gentle voice, as gentle as the sound of nature. Don't worry, you will definitely see him after you leave seclusion. But Yao Meng paused, slightly raised his snow-white chin, and said with tenderness in his eyes, "When the time comes, will I have another child in my belly?" That's not necessarily the case. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 457. Blue Tribe, Fikanyuan. As soon as Musian returned to the garden, he quickly took off his clothes and jumped into the medicinal bath. Medicinal baths not only speed up your practice during practice, but taking medicinal baths on weekdays can also strengthen your body. Most importantly, it strengthens the waist. It is worth mentioning that in fact, Musian's waist does not have any soreness at all now. With the body of his nine-tailed demon fox, his body can be fully restored to its peak condition in less than half a day. It's just that a lot of things happen today, and he needs to soak in a hot spring like this to relax his brain a little. Musian seemed to have noticed a ray of blue light flashing past his eyes. Without even opening his eyes, Musian asked, "Did you go a little too far today? Are you feeling sorry for your Taoist companion?" Yao Meng's sweet and soothing voice sounded in his ears. Musian said helplessly, "I just don't think this is like your style." "Oh." There was a joking smile in Yao Meng's beautiful eyes. "Do you think I am some kind-hearted and gentle fairy sister?" Musian nodded slightly. "This is natural. In my heart, Yao Meng has always been synonymous with gentleness and kindness." Yao Meng's voice faltered, and then he couldn't help but look at Musian a few more times. A faint blush appeared on his pretty face unconsciously, and he looked away inadvertently. Sister Kingdi's attack is high and defense is low. Musian looked at Yao Meng sitting by the hot spring strangely, swam to the shore, reached out and grabbed one of her white and tender ankles, and the gold and silver thread-like foot ornaments on her bare feet. It makes the snow-white skin look particularly attractive. Actually, Ruoxi is trying to conquer the Ascension realm. She helped you before, and I don't think you will mess with her right now, Musian said with a smile. Yao Meng stepped into the hot spring from the shore, letting the hot spring soak into her dress. She walked around in front of Musian, and a fresh fragrance hit her face. Then, a pair of slightly cool hands gently touched her face. "Gently cup his face." Yao Meng looked at him with a smile, a charming smile on his face. "Do you know what kind of disasters you need to encounter in the Ascension realm?" Musian stared silently at this bright and charming face. There was a faint smile in her green eyes, and her red mouth was rouged and glowed with an attractive bright luster. The emergence tribulation requires a total of 3 major tribulations: the physical tribulation, the spiritual consciousness tribulation, and the inner demon tribulation. You might as well guess which disaster is the most difficult. "Is there a prize for guessing correctly?" Musian asked. "There is no prize for guessing right, but there is a penalty for guessing wrong." Yao Meng showed a faint smile, but his eyes flashed with teasing luster. Musian shook his head. "This is unfair." Yao Meng pursed her lips, smiled and took half a step closer to him again, her delicate body almost completely pressed against his chest, and whispered, "What do you want?" The tip of her nose was almost touching the tip of Musian's. Her pure and charming face was very close at hand. Her beautiful eyes were filled with emotional moisture. "You guessed it, after you follow me back to Yaokai, how about I put on black stockings and high heels?" Musian inadvertently glanced at her plump and beautiful legs under her green skirt. Her skin was like gelatin against the water droplets, white and elastic. It has to be said that although the fish in Musian's fish pond are quite different in temperament and personality, as well as in body shape, they all have slim waists and long legs. However, the thing about Yao Meng that most impresses Musian is but its yuzu. "It's good that you stay the way you are now. I liked you the way you were in the beginning," Musian said with a smile. There was a faint smile in Yao Meng's beautiful eyes, and her red mouth was close to his ear. "Then, if you guess it right, how about giving you a chance to use me at will? During this period, you can do anything. For example, use your Wenchen lock and the indescribable ball in my little dark room." Musian remained silent, and his breathing seemed to quicken vaguely. I have to say that this woman has indeed mastered his XP. It's not that Musian likes this, it's just that such a superior empress is willing to surrender to him, which will give people a great sense of satisfaction, both physically and mentally. It doesn't matter whether you use it or not, but I am indeed somewhat interested in the heavenly tribulation of the Ascension realm. Musian coughed softly. If I remember correctly, the Hedeo realm also seems to have physical tribulations and spiritual consciousness tribulations. From this point of view, maybe it is the inner demon tribulation. Yao Meng's eyes flashed with admiration, and he pursed his lips and smiled. Guess again, what was my inner demon back then? This is not easy to guess. Musian remained silent and pondered secretly. To give you a reminder, there are 3 levels of inner demon tribulation. It will turn the most fearful things in people's hearts into reality. If you cannot survive the inner demon tribulation, you will never be able to reach the other side of reality in this life, and you will be trapped in your heart forever. It is difficult to escape from the evil tribulation, even in the Hedeo realm. Musian's eyes moved slightly and he said softly, I have heard that when the first demon emperor led his army to attack Dongzhou, you suppressed the first demon emperor and left behind to protect the Yaokai Holy Land. Your inner demon and the Yaokai Holy Land related? Or, immortality. Almost everyone in the Hedeo realm has the same problem. The monks of my generation in the past have all become a handful of Lois. Therefore, no matter how powerful they are, they hope to survive forever, so they spend a lot of time cultivating imperial medicine. Yao Meng said. Same for you, Musian asked. I didn't feel much about life and death before, otherwise I wouldn't have stopped the 9-life phoenix. Yao Meng said quietly, in the final analysis, the path I take will comply with the principles of nature, and life and death are also part of nature. Musian was about to say something when Yao Meng raised her head slightly and gently pressed her cool lips against his. But it's different since I met you. Yao Meng stared at him and said quietly, I want to live forever, and I want you to live forever. I still remember the accident you encountered in Yaokai that day. Yao Meng whispered, I'm afraid you will die in front of me again, Wu. As soon as she finished speaking, Musian lowered his head and kissed her soft lips again, turning Yao Meng's words into soft sobs. After a while, Yao Meng's voice gradually became soft and charming, and her body softened in Musian's arms. This feeling is really wonderful. Yao Meng closed her eyes slightly, her curled eyelashes trembled slightly, but her face was full of intoxication. When she was in the southern wilderness, she could do nothing except tracking down the whereabouts of the god of the ocean. The thought that Musian might be secretly attacked by other women in Dongzhou made her feel even more unbearable. Although she always said in front of Musian, as long as I don't feel cheated, I am cheating on others, she still didn't like to see Musian being intimate with other coquettish and slutty women. I can only cheat on others, but others can't cheat on me. After a while, Musian let go of her contentedly and said, so your inner demon is Yaokai, immortality, and my affairs. Yao Meng's usually holy face seemed to be a little hot, and she raised her beautiful eyes and glanced at him resentfully. This is the Blue Clan anyway, you don't know how to restrain yourself. If someone sees. Musian chuckled, in the eyes of outsiders, we are married people, so it's not strange to be intimate, right? He paused and continued, so what you said just now has nothing to do with your deliberate provocation of Ruoxi. Yao Meng's face regained a calm smile. The inner demon tribulation will make the cultivator turn the most impressive and unforgettable things into inner demons. You might as well guess now, what will Gong Lianyu encounter in her inner demon now? Musian was stunned for a moment. Yao Meng and T.R.D. Gong Lianyu in front of her, and even got intimate with Musian, and mocked her. Unless it's a girl like Chiener who likes to be cheated on, who else would be so angry that they want to tear her apart? It's a good thing that Yao Meng is in the Yehua realm and Gong Lianyu is also in the Hedeo realm. If it were an ordinary woman, they would probably have to fight. When people are angry, They have different combat power than usual, and the same is true for the Hedeo realm. Only by facing death with equanimity can you survive the heart demon tribulation. She is probably thinking about surviving the Yahua tribulation, holding a sword and chopping me, and then taking the princess back to her own palace, Yao Meng said with a smile. Even if you want to say it, it should be the prince, Musian corrected seriously. Then he continued, so Ruoxi will meet you in the heart demon. If nothing unexpected happens, it will be like this, Yao Meng smiled. If she wasn't afraid of going too far, she actually wanted to send 2 more image stones to the Sword Palace in 2 days. During the period of preparing for the tribulation, Gong Lianyu looked at the intimate image of her and Musian in the image stone, but was powerless to do anything. Even Musian was speechless for a while. He knew that Yao Meng liked green people, but he didn't expect that she could play with green people in such a fancy way. After Gong Lianyu passed the tribulation, she would definitely realize that Yao Meng was trying to piss her off today. So after Gong Lianyu reached the Yahua realm, it was not easy for her to get angry with Yao Meng. Maybe she would have to thank her then. Yao Meng played with a strand of hair, her tall figure looming in the fairy mist, as if pure desire was mixed together, with a unique charm. She blinked her beautiful eyes and said with a smile, I have helped your Taoist partner so much. As her Taoist partner, shouldn't you find a way to compensate your sister? Musian was stunned for a moment, thinking that you made Gong Lianyu so angry that she wanted to tear you apart, and now you want me to compensate you. But he changed his mind and thought that if Gong Lianyu's inner demon was Yao Meng, then Yao Meng really made a great contribution this time. It's no joke that the blackening is 3 times stronger. By then, it's not impossible for Gong Lianyu to comprehend a new sword meaning in the inner demon calamity. At this time, a burst of ethereal spiritual energy surged again in the ancestral land, and Musian's eyes were attracted almost immediately. What is that? Musian asked. It should be the inheritance left by the ancestors of the Blue Clan in the ancestral land. This matter has nothing to do with you, so you don't have to care about it. Yao Meng answered casually, then turned back and glanced at the boy with a charming look. Compared to this, I came all the way from the southern wilderness to find you. Don't you have anything else to say? The hot spring pool was steaming, and Musian admired Yao Meng's beautiful face through the hazy mist. He reached out and gently hugged Yao Meng's tight waist, and asked, speaking of which, I just heard them mention the Sabbath. I seem to have heard of it before. What exactly is it? Yao Meng shook his head gently. The Sabbath cannot be explained in a few words. If you look directly from the ancient books, it may be clearer. In the past, many cultivators in Zhou died in the Sabbath. It originated from the heavens, and each time a divine messenger would be chosen as the spokesperson for the Sabbath. In fact, this matter has nothing to do with you. The Lianji sect is not within the scope of the Sabbath's divine punishment. Moreover, if you follow me back to Yaokai, there will be no problem. After all. Her voice suddenly stagnated, her pretty face flushed, and she uttered a soft nasal sound. Well, do you want to listen to the serious business or do something else? If you mess up again, I will lock you in the small dark room. After a while, Yao Meng glared at the young man, a little embarrassed and annoyed. Musian coughed lightly and stopped at the right time. Didn't I win the bet with you just now? Can't I collect some interest now? Could it be that the dignified emperor wants to cheat? Yao Meng glanced at him, stood up gracefully and left the hot spring, saying, then I have fulfilled the bet now, don't say I cheated afterwards. Musian was stunned, thinking that if this is not cheating, then what is it? I haven't even made any demands yet. The water droplets on Yao Meng's blue dress turned into steam. She tied the thin ribbon around her slender waist again, tidied up the messy skirt, and slightly lazy hair. The next moment, it seemed that she had turned back into a fairy with extraordinary elegance in an instant. Her beauty was breathtaking, as if there was a divine moon slowly turning behind her, and every inch of her skin was sparkling. I still need to go back to the sacred place of Yaokai. If you want me to fulfill the bet just now, come to Yaokai then, she said softly with a smile. Musian said, are you leaving right after you arrive? The Sabbath is coming, and I need to confirm that the Yaokai formation is worry-free. Yao Meng told the truth in a gentle tone. Then, she stepped on the void, walked to Musian's side, raised her hand and stroked his face, and breathed like orchids, but after that, I will have a lot of free time. By then, it will be okay to fulfill any request you make, okay? Yao Meng twisted up her hairpin, rolled up her scattered hair, turned around and turned into green dots, and left the Blue Clan. It's not a good feeling to have your XP controlled by someone. Who wrote the way to control your husband? Just change it to the way to control your shepherd. Musian felt his heartbeat quicken, and couldn't help but complain in his heart. Immediately, he couldn't help but think of what the elder of the Blue Tribe had just said. He couldn't help but whisper to himself, what exactly is the Sabbath? At this time, Musian seemed to hear a sad song coming from the ancestral land. The song sounded quite sad, like a pet abandoned by someone, very sad. Musian suddenly woke up and sat up in shock from his dying illness. Oh my god, I forgot Linger in the ancestral land. Sorry, I just came back to prepare snacks and accidentally forgot you. After Musian finally took Linglong back, he was now placing plates of snacks in the courtyard to cheer her up. In addition to the meat buns that Miss Linglong loved, there were also sun-dried beef jerky, crystal elbows, osmanthus cakes and other snacks, as well as tea. Musian was naturally not stupid enough to go and pick up Miss Linglong directly. He couldn't tell her, I was taking a medicinal bath just now, and I was flirting with Yao Meng. No matter how innocent and kind this girl was, it was easy to guarantee that she would turn into beep after hearing this. After all, for Linling, who possessed the word spirit, this was just a matter of words. So before Musian went to the ancestral land to pick up Linling, he first went to the back kitchen of the Blue Clan and brought some snacks to comfort her. From the current situation, it is obvious that the effect is very good. Musian gently touched her silver hair and smiled, this is the snack I prepared for you. Do you like it? Linling pecked her head gently. Sorry, you don't like to attract attention. I really embarrassed you today, Musian said softly. Linglong has always stayed in her own cave or in Lianji Peak, and rarely seen people. Releasing demonic energy in the ancestral land to attract the attention of a group of cultivators may still be a little uncomfortable for her. Musian raised his head subconsciously when he suddenly felt a soft and moist touch on his cheek. Linling, like a kitten, supported the table with both hands, half lying beside him, and gently licked his face with her tongue. Musian came back to his senses and subconsciously called out, Linger. She raised her clear red eyes and looked at Musian, handing him the small notebook she had written. I don't like to attract other people's attention. They all have a purpose for me and want me to help them. Other people's malice is annoying. She held up the small notebook, but I'm glad I can help you. Musian was silent for a while. Facing this innocent girl, his emotional skills always seemed a little pale and powerless. AAA. Linling made a confused sound, tilting her head to look at him in confusion. Nothing, I just suddenly felt a little guilty, always felt sorry for you. Musian muttered. Linling reached out and hugged Musian's head, then gently pressed Musian's face into her arms, gently stroked the back of his head, and sang sweetly, as if to comfort him. Is there anything that can make you happy? Musian asked in a muffled voice in her soft arms. Don't leave me. Linling let go of him and wrote in a small notebook. Musian was startled, and then said helplessly, I won't leave you. AAA. Linling blinked her beautiful eyes and sang joyfully. Then, she hesitated, took out an osmanthus cake from the table and stuffed it into Musian's mouth, and wrote, Here, this is for you to eat. After swallowing the snack with great difficulty, Musian was quite speechless and said, "Thank you, but I'm not hungry." "You actually bribed me with an osmanthus cake." Musian was silent for a while. "Are you happy now?" Linling nodded gently, and then reached out and hugged Musian in her arms. Musian's face was buried in Linling's arms intimately. After a while, she felt the warm breath coming from her chest, and seemed to have noticed something. Her pretty face blushed slightly, and she lowered her head and glanced at him. "Bad boy. This is just a normal physiological reaction." Musian looked up at her and said softly, "Do you still need my help today?" Linling shook her head reservedly. "AAA." Musian stood up and wanted to leave. She was anxious in her heart, and quickly stretched out her little hand and gently grabbed one of Musian's hands, looking at him shyly with moist eyes, and then pulled Musian back to the chair with force. "AAA." Linling said in a low voice. "AAA, give me the ticket," Linling said in a low voice.